standing on the avenue that once led to the landlord's house here in Powellsboro called Powell's. In the background we have what's left of the great house. The Powells were landlords here for many years. It was one of the last estates to be divided by the Irish Land Commission or the Congested District Board. Powellsboro is a townland situated in the parish of Curry in South Sligo, renowned for the many traditional musicians born here. In the 30s and 40s it is said that every household had a musician or a singer or a whistler. Many, of course, immigrated to make their names in England and the USA. While the name Powellsboro suggests that the area was called after the landlords called Powells, the Gaelic name was Palafuca, which translates to the hole of the ghost. It included areas known as Barrow, Drimrow, Rodings and Tonacoya, often referred to as Flynstown because Flynn was the dominant family name here. There was also an area known as Calvary, where a large number of families lived in poorly erected mud cabins with small areas of land. Many of them had been evicted from lands elsewhere. The people were industrious and talented, with many fine sportsmen and women. There were many exciting events. Like in 1919, the bogs moved. The Powellsboro Marching Band was in existence for a long time, and like all communities, the troubled times took its toll here. 2 men were executed during the Civil War, and immigration in the 30s and 40s robbed the area of many of its fine young people. We now go to the Powellsboro Old School building. I'm standing in the doorway. This was the only entrance and exit, of course. There were, I understand, 2 windows. And of note, I suppose, in this doorway is the fact that there's no timber beams, it's just a stone beam across the doorway. It's at a mud floor, early 1900s. A new school was built up the road just a few hundred yards. That school was in Moyla. Many of the teachers who taught here were Mr. Devitt was one of them. There was Mrs. May. There were several other teachers. There was Mr. Brett and Mrs. Brett. And many of the pupils who went through this school immigrated. Rodings, having just passed the birthplace of renowned fiddle player Paddy Sweeney, we travel on to meet James and Mary Agnes Coffey. Well, Jim, just to ask you, did the Coffeys always live in Powellsboro, or did they come into the area?
No, they always lived in Powellsboro for generations back.
And I presume they were always farmers, or?
They were, that was their livelihood. Yeah.
That's good. And I know, Mary Agnes, that you were married from Newcastle.
That's correct.
And
Yes.
I know Newcastle isn't that far away, but would you mind telling us, how did you actually meet now, you know, or did you know one another?
Well, I knew, Daddy had called him the water side. I knew him for ages and he knew me, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And there was nothing else to it than that. But I remember after that funeral, we met and we didn't care since.
That's good. And whose was the funeral, incidentally?
Jim Coffey in Ballycurry was an
My
uncle.
uncle's funeral.
An uncle, yes.
Yes.
Yes. And, you know, in them times now, for entertainment, you know, what did you do?
Well, I tell you what, that time, you know Francie O'Toole?
Yes, indeed, I do.
Well, her father, the Lord Messian, he used to give the house every Sunday night for a plan. And they was together from all over, from Burrenadden to Tubbercurry and all round about, and that's where we used to have entertainment, and it was well looked after, it was all right, and we'd be all home at 12 o'clock.
At 12 o'clock?
Well, aye.
That's good,
Yes.
that's good. And
it wasn't fair from our house.
no. And of course you had plenty of musicians.
All there was,
That's right.
Matt Carey himself could play, you know.
That's right, yes.
And there was Peg Spellman, the Lord Messian, the mother did, and let's see who else, and Pat Keeler.
Johnny Michael Cawley.
And Johnny Michael Cawley, that's right. And then some strangers might come in, you know, they'd play so you won't play.
Of course.
The fife or a fiddle or whatever, you know.
And would the musicians, would they get any payment, or would they get a drink?
No, none that time, no.
Look, at you get a drink, maybe?
Well, I don't know whether they get a drink either. Really, I don't think so.
Possibly not.
No, you get the balance credit.
Now, I know in Powellsboro here that there was a great history of drama, and I know you were very much involved in drama, Jim.
Yes.
So, I don't know about you, Mary Agnes, whether you were involved in drama or not.
We did a play there, paid another one coin. Yes, and we got on there. We staged it in several places in Burrenadden and Newcastle and Curry. So we got a good reception.
And I think you won a few awards at a drama festival or something with some plays. Were you involved at that time?
Well, I don't know. I couldn't say enough straight over that I got an award, but we figured fairly prominently with the plays, and we got on very well. We stayed in a clear too, and a crowd of cool.
And where now did you do the rehearsal for that? Where would you gather?
Here quite locally in Sweeney's.
Oh,
you know,
yes.
where it is.
I do, of course.
Where Conley has.
That's right.
That was our house.
Very good.
You know, and we met there, and we used to rehearse the plays. And Tom Conley was responsible in no small measure to get us roped in. He was very good. That was Jim's brother.
Lord Mercy, no,
Lord Mercy, yes indeed.
And another thing now, just to recount on something like that, the schools of that time when you were going to school, going back a good bit.
Yeah.
I know there was I suppose the first school was over here in Powellsboro,
Yeah.
and I suppose there was a head school before that. Can you recall anything about your school days, like?
Well, I can. We used to walk to my lot, and Mr. Cahill taught us, and we were very happy about going to school and enjoyed it. And he was an excellent teacher, so he was, but what we learned in school, we have it off yet.
Some people would say that he was a bit cross.
He was, but I'd never blame him for that, because he kept discipline, and it's necessary with pupils in a way. And he was cross, but he was a great teacher, and it was evident from the number of children that came from Tubbercurry to him.
Well, I think at that time, was there a school in Tubbercurry? Might not be the school that
There was a school in Tubbercurry, and Dan Levine that was teaching him, but Dan was a hopeless teacher.
Yes.
And they left him and came to my law, and that's what happened.
Oh, I see, yes. That solves something for me. Mary Agnes,
Yes.
I know you went to school in Newcastle.
Yes.
And I presume it's not the existing school. Where actually was that old school in Newcastle?
That old school was, you know, it was a good quarter of a mile down near Bunnaden from the school that's in it now. It was opposite Jerry Hunt's, you know that house there.
Yes.
And there was like 2 divisions in it, senior and junior. That was all girls in one school and all boys in the other school, the same. And there were like 2 teachers in each school, but 4 teachers. There was Mr. O'Dowd, you remember him?
Yes.
And then there was a Miss Foy from Bunnahaddon. And there was Jim O'Dowd's wife, Mrs. O'Dowd, God rest them all, and Mrs. Gallagher. That's Father Frank's mother.
Mother, yes.
Yes, yes.
And just when we're talking about Duke Castle now, there was a castle over there, and there's very little about it. What family, can you remember what family owned that castle or lived in it? Or,
Well, I never remember anybody living in that place. It would be years.
No, any one time I'd say it was gone into disuse, but it'll be years before that, I'd say.
Yeah.
Joan Moore that owned it, they say, and then the Darcys, I think they came there to where Johnny Taylor was, and then
Oh, yes.
I think so, that was it.
Right.
But Joan Moore MacDonald was supposed to be the man that owned the castle, and it must be there for generations.
Long time, yes.
Yeah.
Another thing that we'd like to recount on was, I think every townland nearly had a band at some stage, and I know there was a fife and drum band in Powellsboro. Have you any recollection of that, or where was it based or anything like that?
It was based, I think, in Jack's Punt, in Powellsboro House.
Yes.
Yeah, it was. And that's where it was stored. And they used to nurse off and on when there was on a display. And there was 5 pairs as well. There was Pat McCoy, and there were several of them, and they used to be ready for any emergency.
Any action.
Yeah, that's right, that's right.
And I think you said earlier on that when the Troubles came about, the band disbanded, and
Yes, it is.
something about the instruments being buried in the bog.
They were buried in the end with a Powellsboro bog. It went into disuse anyway.
Yes.
That was it, and that was the last of it.
And I think then there was one particular incident that something about a display in Riverstown, or there was somebody from Moylaw.
There was John Stinson. He was involved in a grazing riot, and he got shot as a result. The police attacked them. They were trying to drive the cattle off the farm, and he was with the crowd. And he was an innocent sort of a lad. They were hid along the fence, and he put his head up, and tomorrow they spied him, and they shot him across with it. And that ended that riot. It was all for the sake of getting land.
Yes, yes. And the band, of course, appeared in it.
Yes, the band appeared there and gave a display, and they were marching, and there was the big song composed about the trouble that happened in Riverstown, where John Stinson met his fate, and it said that they brought to justice those that did it.
Right, right.
It was,
I think there's a monument there to him.
there is a monument. There is there's a headstone in Roe, I think it was memory. So,
There is, yes.
Because at that particular time there was awful display about it, the shooting, because of course the people were always in variance with England, you see, and it was the hostile, and the police were working for England, and of course that they were dangerous enough, you see, if there was any interference. So there it is, they always got the better of the people.
And
With English law.
I suppose around that time too, it's recalled, and I've read it someplace like that, where people, that would be coming home from England, that they were often attacked going through Pullafuka, as they called it. There was somebody recounted that there was supposed to be a highwayman around Powellsboro. Did you ever hear about him, or?
Well, I didn't exactly. There probably was, you see, but I must have, it mustn't be in my days.
Maybe not.
It mustn't. But I know there was a lot of rowdyism with the people at that particular time too. There was a bit more dedicated now that was a display of fighting.
Yes.
One thing or another. Yes, and that they rather with sticks. So it is because of a fair day they'll give a display. And because I remember making one family saying, he says, we used to wear the Powellsboro.
That were the two castles against the Powellsboro.
That's right.
Yes. Well, you coming together, so turn that around.
That's right.
Now, there's another thing that we wanted to recall, and that was, how, around the times of the blue shirts and that, and I know Powellsboro, had a well-organised group. Maybe you could recall a little bit of how the blue shirts used to operate and what they used to do in this particular area.
Well, they used to meet and have a display and have a nurse, and they used to always turn out if there was any public meeting, and nurse along and back up their speakers and all that sort of thing, and they helped to kind of to free the trouble that was going on with regard to O'Duffy. So that was it. So that they gave a great display, the Blue Church did. And as a matter of fact, that they won to a point because they were a strong organisation. And eventually, General O'Duffy got compensation from the government.
And boys and girls were members. Men and women were.
And the boys were fitted out, and the girls had blue blouses. You see, and it was a lovely display. It was.
Yeah, I've heard people saying that they used to go to Sligo and different places.
They used to go wherever there was any public meeting that always appear.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I suppose transport at that time wasn't easy.
No, it wasn't easy. No, it was not easy, and yet they used to get going.
Some one way or another.
So that's right. That's right.
Now, another point too, like that, the times have moved so fast since, we'll say, the 20s or the 30s. Is there any particular thing that happened during, well, as we say, your youth or well, indeed your lifetime, that you would think changed your life or the life of the community in a very big way? Was there anything big, we'll say, highlight of your...
Well, except that of course, I don't know what I could talk about. We find there's an awful change now in that electricity business compared with what was formerly. What was in the house, there was, we had a lantern years ago, and there were the candles and all that sort of thing, and that moved on then to the lamp, and then later down we had the electricity. So there's a big improvement altogether besides what we were used to.
And I suppose moving over to you, Mary Agnes, I suppose you would find the transport system, like, I know people used to walk and everything.
Walk and cycle was the most. And now, I remember we used to join and we'd get a car to the hall in Bunnaden. And it's what we'd get a car and they'd bring it,
Yes.
Now, there was no such a thing, there was very few cars. And bicycles, that was always on the go. Bicycle, everyone had a bicycle.
It would be very hard to get tyres for them and everything like that.
Well, yes, I remember this. We couldn't get tires. This was when I was in Powellsboro now.
Yeah.
And Maureen cared of her. She wore them inside her clothes, and she brought 2 tubes from England. She was coming home on a holiday, and Francie told her. Do you remember that?
That's right.
She was down in the house with them.
Yeah.
I remember that.
You couldn't get them here.
You couldn't be got here.
No.
Yes, yes. And another thing that, you know, landlords, I know that Powell was the landlord, I suppose, around here mostly.
Oh.
How did the landlords, you know, treat their tenants in this area, you know, around that time? Or?
Well, they didn't treat them so awful well. They acted the rent very harshly. And if they hadn't the rent, they took the land from them.
Yes.
And they had what they called the battering ram to put them out, you see. And the people were very poor at that time because there wasn't much of an income off the land, and yet the landlord wanted his rent and he had to get it. So there were bad times. That's why the change came, that they banished the landlords. And it was a move in the right direction for the poor people after. It was.
That was where the land league came in, I suppose.
That's right, indeed, yes.
Davis.
And John Davis, yes. Started. So, Paul was the landlord here. And in order to get them out, they used to be organising there, and they'd have the band round about, and they'd be marching in and out. So eventually they gave it up, and the government compensated them, and they gave the land round to the people then. So it was an improvement.
An improvement. And I know myself now from looking around this area that I suppose in this road in here is only about 2 miles long. I'm sure there would have been a big number of families living at one stage, I would say when you were 30 or 40.
There was about 3 times the number that there is today, at least, here in Powellsboro.
Yes.
There was, because you can see the remains of houses here and there, they're still left.
That's right, that's
Yes,
right.
There was a lot more of a population.
School days again, Jim. Do you remember Mr. Devitt? I think he taught in the Powellsboro school, or he certainly lived on this road in.
Yes, I do.
You remember?
I didn't know Mr. Devitt, but I heard him. I heard him, and he taught in the old school, and what we call the hall now.
Yes. And I think you said earlier on that
Yes.
a special Irish class used to be held or something.
There used to be a class held once a year in John David's house, and there was a teacher used to come, I think from the gates or something, and ask us to read or to spell, as the case might be. So we used to go down every year to Mr. Devitt, and he was supposed, it was said that he got a certain concession by that teacher coming there. But there's something to it anyway, I don't know.
Well, there must have been, there probably was some type of small grant or something like that.
He was a respectable old man.
Yes.
He was.
And we're promoting the Irish language.
That's right, yes. Because John Devitt was supposed to get more if we could read the Irish, and he wouldn't get as much if we could spell it.
Yes, yes, yes. And in that context, were there any native Irish speakers around here that you can recall?
Well, I couldn't name anyone. I didn't. But I'd say there was teachers that had a good knowledge of Irish, but I never heard them speak.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. And one thing we missed there too, I meant to ask you earlier on, I presume you remember the workhouse in Tubbercurry.
Yes.
And what effect had that now on this particular area, the fact that the workhouse was in Tubbercurry? Was it of benefit to the area, or?
Well, at the time it was a benefit in various ways. Patients used to go to it all right when they were sick, and they used to buy a lot of stuff from the people to support it.
Yes.
Buy turnips, cabbages and potatoes and turf and various things. We often sold turf to them.
Right.
You see, it was an asset, all right. It was. And then there was inmates kept there that was kind of destitute, like. So it was a good building.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
And another thing, I suppose, at that particular time, there must have been a lot of travelling journeymen and tradesmen. You know, people that would be unsettled and travelling around trying to earn a bit of money.
That is right. There was a lot of those journeymen, all right, because we could turn them kind of tramps, you see, that they had their trade off and they were good men, but they used to drink it, so they'd be on the run. And there used to be, there was a lot of them times.
Yes.
And I get around and it all.
Children with poor children.
Huh?
Children with poor children.
Yeah. There was a poor children used to come along there. He used to stay in a house there beside. It's just beside Pat Hunt's there. It was where Tom Hunt went back to Matt's, Matt we call it now. And he used to there, and he used to travel around, and he used to fix clocks and things.
Yes.
Yes. But he had a bushy head, and he used to have a pants on, but a skirt.
Lucky to have it. Yes, indeed.
And he was quite a wild. There was a lot of those people, like, well, there was a few of them anyway. There's none of them appearing today.
Well, no, but maybe they're appearing in a worse form at that time.
That might be the truth.
And another thing now, just we were talking about it, you know, in the troubled times now, it must have been very difficult to live, like, was it, with, you know, all the, you know, black and tans around and all that kind of thing.
Oh, indeed it was, and people were in sheer terror. They were, because I remember my father, God rest his soul, coming from Uncle John travelling one night, and he met two of them coming out the road, and they had two geese under their arm, and they were coming from Connors there beside Hunt's. And my father came down and he was breathless. He said, the sands are through Powellsboro.
Yes.
And then Tom Conley came around and he says to Maggie, he said, put them creamery checks for the Tandoon search.
Very good, very good.
The people were in sheer terror.
Oh, there must have been, yes.
Because them Tans could get you and beat you, and they could murder you if it went that, but they get away with it.
Of course, yes. Yes.
There was nothing done to them.
Nothing, oh no, of course, they had the law under the yeah.
But Tom came out in a crafty way and he said, put them for the Tandoon search. And it was that he had to know that place.
Very good, yes indeed. And of course, I suppose now this is going a bit more into the, you know, when the Tans, you know, when the Civil War developed in,
Yes.
Was it more difficult then than, we'll say, in 16 when the Civil War broke out?
It was more difficult because people people knew too much about other. And if they did anything, then they were spotted too quick.
Yes.
You see, and they were more hostile to their own than to the common enemy.
Right.
They were queer work done that time too.
That's the time the men were killed.
Yeah, that's right.
Was it?
That was it, you see. And the men that for their own, men that killed them, you see, it was civil war.
Bit entertainment bit on it now. But I know that you mentioned, you know, the house dances and
Oh, yeah.
something like that. But just now, you know, yourselves, what other types of entertainment would be, you know, popular at that time?
Well, on other occasions there might be a play or something that you go to, a crowd of being a play, you know.
Yes.
That was seldom. But on Sunday night, when we started going to dances, this house that we used to go to wasn't far from us, and we'd go to the dance. I don't know what time, we'd be home anyway at 12 o'clock. So that, there's no need in the name.
No need.
And then at Christmas, Christmas the 4th of Spree, in some house locally too, on the 4th of Spree. And the fellas would join and buy a little barrel of porter between them. And the girls didn't have to pay anything, and we all treated to a nice cup of tea.
Very nice.
And then,
That was very nice of you. And I suppose at that time then there'd be maybe a few people maybe back from England after doing
that's true. Yes,
And then during the Lenten period we do the play.
the play, yes.
And pass the time.
It did surely, and kept people out of parents' way.
Yeah, that's right.
Used to be any bit of horse racing, or you know, I think somebody mentioned races here and there.
There was horse racing down on Powellsboro. There was. It was an annual event too. It was. And there used to be a great crowd in it. They used to be very successful.
Yes.
Mm.
And I suppose one thing we didn't dwell on too much, market days and fair days, I think they were very entertaining days around the place as well. People always made a...
Yes, Monday was a great day. It was a great day for the market. Used to always come on and they'd have the road cars down around along Cooks there. And the women, there used to be a lot of people used to buy eggs and have a display on the street. And the people would bring them in and sell them to them, and that's how it was. And then the fair day was a big day altogether, because there was no market at that time.
No.
It was. And Tubbercully was a great fair, it was. That was the procedure that time.
And I think another thing we didn't mention was potchie making.
Yes.
Was that practiced in this area, or did you know anything about it? Or?
Yes, it was practiced, but not to a big extent, but it was practiced all right. It was, and there was people used to make it.
Yes.
And sell it. And of course, they run the risk. The girls would after them, but they used to take a chance on it.
Talking about the musicians in Newcastle,
yes.
And there were some fine musicians, but there were also fine musicians in Powellsboro, and I know we're very close to the homestead of one of them, Pack Sweeney.
Yeah.
I'm sure you recall Pack and some of his music.
I do recall.
So maybe you could tell us a little bit about Pack.
Yes, I do. I knew Pack well, and he compiled a reel, The Moving Bogs of Powellsboro. And I still rather, but I have a record of that. And he went to America, and he made history in America. He was an excellent player with Pack Sweeney. He was, and he used to play with John Winfrey and Luke O'Connor at home here on bands.
And they'd play, I suppose, around the place in different venues.
Areas, that's right, yes.
And I think when he went to America then he played with Paddy Killoran's band.
Paddy Killoran, he was on that band. He was, because I'd seen his photo with the band. You see, and my brother Tom knew him very well there in America, and he was often at his dances where he used to play. So he got on well. He did for a number of years now.
That's right, and
but he had a great record for playing.
I believe he was a very, very good player.
Very good player.
You know. And of course, we're not so far away from the moving bogs either, and that was a big event when it happened.
Yeah, that's right, it was. And he termed his reel with that name, he did, because it was there in Powellsboro.
Mm-hmm.
It happened around the Christmas. The bog moved in on the land, it did.
Yes.
And there was a lot of destruction done.
Was it heavy rain before the bogs moved?
What's it?
Was there heavy rain before the bogs moved?
There was heavy rain, there was, and it was supposed to be some lot of fluid had gathered in the centre of the bog, and it was on a silty bed, and it was supposed to, with a mighty lot of rain that came.
Well, continuing on the music theme, we move to Conley's, and Mary Bridget and Jim are here with us, and we've already spoken to Jim Coffey about Paddy Sweeney and his recordings in America. I think there are a lot of other musicians around Powellsboro, and maybe Mary Bridget, you might be able to tell us a few more of the musicians that were prominent.
Well, quite a number of those are dead now that I am recording. Charlie Flynn and Paddy Flynn and Johnny. And there's Johnny Goulden, and then there's another Flynn family, the four brothers that played.
They were your own brothers?
They're my own four brothers, yeah.
And they some of them made records in America?
They did, they made records in Leicester in England and also in New York.
That was Paddy and Michael?
Paddy and Michael Flynn. Mm.
And they played with Paddy Killoran's
They
band
played
as well
with Paddy Killoran, yes.
Sweeney?
Yeah, and Paddy Sweeney. Mm.
And there was a few more, I think, there that you had.
Quite a number more here now. There's Thomas Gilmartin, and there's Pat McCoy, and there's Johnny Goulden. They're all gone.
Deceased, yes.
Yeah.
And I think there were a few more.
And John Feely and Frank Welch and his son Peter. And then there's Mrs. Hunt. She was formerly from Newcastle.
That's right.
Yeah, she was a lovely fiddle player.
But Frank Welch is still alive, I heard.
No, Frank is dead. Peter is alive, yeah. Peck Stenson.
That's right, yes. And I think you had, was there Burks as well?
And there was the two Burke brothers, John and Jim Joe. They played the fiddle. And John Wimsey, of course.
Yeah, John was mentioned.
Yeah.
And I suppose, you know, in those times, you remember back, well, they used to congregate in houses and have a tune or...
Oh, yeah. It was a regular occurrence to congregate in houses, and they had what they used to call plans.
Yes.
Yeah.
You might expand on those plans for us now.
Well, that was the entertainment that time. There was no such thing as going into halls and all that. It was country houses. Yeah.
And would there be any drink at those times?
Yes, and well, the tea and the soda cake can be introduced. There was no fancy goods going on. Yeah.
No, it wouldn't.
Yeah.
And there was one thing I remember myself, the kiddies while at school, but there was a lot of money raised at that time for repairing the school and the church.
The church, yes.
And some of those people would have played at that.
Oh yeah, they did. Mrs. Hunt played at them, and John Feely played at the Cayleys.
That's right.
Yeah.
And were there male musicians as well, didn't they?
Oh yeah, from my lot. Mick,
yes.
Yeah.
Just the name came across.
Yeah.
And Now, we did get some information too about the moving bogs, etc., etc. And there was one other thing that came to our mind. We didn't elaborate on it. Was, you know, the Christmas festivities. How was there anything in particular about the Christmas that would make it special? We'll say going back a good few years now.
Oh, well, the Christmas was always special, of course. Now, these, well, I don't know, you couldn't say the way they entertained in the homes that time. It was a big jar of porter they'd bring in. Yeah, it was in a big jar that would take it to the house.
Yes.
Maybe an odd bottle of whiskey. Now, it wasn't that plentiful that time.
Was that punching as well?
Well, there was a bit of home brew now and again.
Yes.
Yeah.
I suppose some of it good and some of it bad.
Oh, yeah. Some of it now, it wasn't too wise to drink a lot of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the Wren boys at that time, I presume they'd all go over to the Wren? Or
Oh, yes, they did. And they had good music that time.
Sure
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Would they collect any few bob? Or?
Oh, they would. No, nothing like they collect today, Michael, but they collected, yeah. And then they go out for the New Year too.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think they used to buy a dropped in and have a big party that night.
A big party that night. That was the fun of the game.
Maybe a bit of bread and jam or something like that.
Nothing higher.
Yes. And one thing now, just when we are talking about the music, and it's something that we haven't covered either. You know the threshing operation. That used to be a big operation as well.
Oh yes. Half the town land would be gathered in the garden for that.
And there could be a bit of a dance afterwards.
Well, there often was a big dance afterwards. Yeah.
Right.
We ourselves, we saw 21 men in the garden at the threshing machine.
That's right.
That's since we got married now.
We're very here to get 21 people in
Oh, God.
town land, that's one. Few town lands.
Yeah.
Yes, but too much work.
Well, I suppose that was in it all the time. We move away from the music now and over to you, Jim. I know that you worked in Basta for a long, long time. And, you know, back in the 60s, there was a big change in the part-time fireman came into being. What effect, you know, in your own opinion, had Basta and industry like on this area and on the farming community?
It had a big effect on it because it will give a bit of a boost to the small farmers around the place, you know. It gave them an extra few pound, you know. Done a fair lot for myself.
Yes.
Otherwise I might have to go to England or someplace, so I hadn't that to fall back at.
Yeah.
It was a regular income, I suppose.
It was a regular income, it was. It's a weekly income anyways, and it's a helped up at the fair job to keep going.
Can you remember when you started, like, I don't know what year it was, what was your starting wage? Or?
About 4.50, I think, 4.10, that was that time, I think. As far as I can remember, and I started at 6 o'clock for that too.
And worked until
Worked at 3.
3 months.
Get another crowd in, I start at 3 o'clock and work at 12, which I did to rotate, you know,
Yes.
every second week.
And I suppose at one stage there were a lot of people employed in Basta at the height of it.
A few years after I started, and there was a lot of people working on it, up to 300, I think, maybe over it.
There was a lot of people
In Dallas and all there was, yeah. They used to come from Sligo on the train, so I run the train about, used to come into town about 8 o'clock that time. There was a lot of girls coming up on it from Sligo.
Right.
And they'd be back again in the evening on it. They were subsidised, I think, for coming up. It shows that they couldn't get enough around their own area to work in it.
Something. And of course, I suppose around that time too, GWI was in Tubbercurry and...
What was, there was a lot working in GWI. Big crowd. Now I wouldn't know how many was in it. And then there was the two like Gage, of course, there was a good many working there.
And the founder, certainly...
There was a good few in GWI working there.
And of course, GWI moved on to Colony, but Tooling Gage remained still operating in
Still
Tubbercurry.
operating, going well indeed.
And so was Basta, and there were other small industries. And do you think now that, we'll say, the changes in farming that has happened over over your period of time, what do you think is the future for farming in this area?
Yeah, well, I suppose it's pretty good at the moment. There isn't at that time there was different things on the farm. You were raising a few pigs and a lack of turkeys and all that, but that's all gone out now for farming. You're relying completely on the few cattle. You want some bit of an income around on the small farms, which a good many had at that time, like a bit of an income coming in around it. Well, it was a good boost for them. Farming has improved like in a good many ways. They're modernised a bit anyways.
It's a bit easier then.
There's days and cart and the horse and cart in them days, but it's the tractor now.
You know, probably in your lifetime, there might be some major major change that seemed to affect your lives. You know, what would it be? I know some people mentioned electricity and more people would say machinery on the farm. Was there anything else, any kind of a monument that sticks out in your...
The only monument, Michael, is the water.
The water?
Getting water into our homes. We had water for cattle, home or nothing, only drawing it. The water was the biggest thing, I think, of all, to my knowledge.
Well, certainly in this area, I suppose.
Oh, yes.
It was very dry here, there was no water at all around the farm.
Where used you actually have to go to
Carry a well,
Carry
sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was another well down at Mayor Brannan's, there, Edward Brannan's, but I am telling you, that was the biggest thing. Don't think you could put on a washing machine then.
That's right.
I often started washing at bedtime when it was drawn with this and calf, didn't I, Jim?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, when I should be gone to bed 12 o'clock at night.
Well, I suppose that was directly related to electricity as well. If you hadn't electricity, you couldn't do that. So
Down the pot on a big fire.
it certainly was a lot of hard work
It was
involved.
hard labour.
That thing with the spade too and the wheelbarrow.
Right.
Put out with this and cart.
This machine is doing it now.
Oh,
No tractor for it.
progress.
Anyway,
He was a great musician.
he was.
Used to do a bit of dancing.
He was. Used to be doing a bit of dancing, and when he was in digs in Halifax, he come in one evening, and the first thing he do was when he'd take off his shoes and watch them, he'd take the landlady and was humming round the house, dancing and humming, swinging. All loved him. All loved John. And he got honey one evening. He got some honey, and he says to the landlady, "I see," he says, "you keep a bee." Keep a bee.
Very nice, very nice.
That was John.
And I think you remember the day that he went to England or something.
Yes, I do. I remember the day he went to England. There was at a fair in Tubbercurry, and he sold a couple of cattle. It was the time of the economic war. The cattle was very bad. And he had a neighbour, Matt Brannan, with him. And he come from the fair, he tied all in, all his stock, and stuck the key in the door, and they took 2 bicycles and cycled to Charlestown. Matt Brannan had a brother in Charlestown, Mike. Let's call him Mike. He was the powerhouse in Charlestown. And they left next morning for England. And I went, that was in April, and I went the following month, and I met John Wilmsey in Halifax. And he was the life of the town. One day he was looking at walking, you know, the corporation of these that was tearing the tires, there was a horse-drawn wagon, pulling the wagon. And he asked the foreman what a job. I said, "I'm full up, Paddy," he says. And he went away a few steps, and he turned round. "You know," he says, "what you'll do," he says, "sell the horse and take me on." That was John, that was John. He had always in rows everywhere he went. Everywhere.
And before he left here, he played for Sligo as well.
He
played
did,
football.
he did, and he was a good musician, and he often said when he coming home, he says he'd go into have a couple of hours in the Guinness rack, he says he'd go and have a sleep on it.
Yes, yes.
Yes. He was a gas man, was John. Everybody liked him. It was all life. And he got into difficulties, he bought land in bad times and everything sort of went against him, and he decided he'd pull out.
Well, when you went to England yourself then, what age were you?
I'd be 18. I'd be 18 in June. I would have been 18 in June. At that time there was no money in England, no. I worked in what they call the Delft, the quarry. And it was hard work. I wasn't fit for it. I was the first navvy shovel ever, you see, was there. And John Wimsey wasn't on, he went out to John Vasey, I think John was his name, wasn't it? And out to Clitheroe, out to the hay. And the following week I had a letter from John to come out to the hay, he says, and we'd meet, he says. You get a bus in Halifax to bring you to Bundley, and from Bundley to Clitheroe. And come out to a place called Dunsup Bridge, and we'd meet you there. So anyways, I done that, and was glad to get out where I was. So when I met them, Fred Vasey says to me now, he says, I was the next farm to them. Now he says, the first thing he says, this farm will ask you, he says, he'll ask you, what age are you? And tell him, he said, you're 21. Right? I had this rolled up. First thing he did, he asked me, how old are you, he says, 21. He says, nay lad, he says, you never have shaved too many times. So anyway, I was hired for £7 for the month, and that was the rate. I said John Wimsey had the same, but Fred Vasey was there for years, and he was the boss when he was there. He had a few pounds a month more. So that's the crack now. That's it.
Well, Red Vasey, you call him, was the father of John Vasey, I suppose they were both fiddle players. He used to play music.
Oh, John was good. He was a man. He was a strong man. Tall, strong man. He was.
And do you spend long in England that time, like when that
I come home that back in. I come home at Christmas. Christmas.
And you went back a few times after that, didn't you?
I went back the following May again, I think it was, April or May. And I brought a sister with me, Ellie, for her first time. That was with those. Like in them time, the hay, like you're doing the hay, if you couldn't milk, when they get to know you could milk, you get extra. Wasn't no milking machines at all, and I'd never seen no milk. In them years, that's a long time ago. Long time back in 1936.
And were you in England during the war?
I was in England, but you had to break your time. Tell them. If you were 2 years, they'll break the time you were liable for the army.
Yes.
So we used to break it. You could only come home for a month or 2 years. We had a couple of years again, like. I was in England up until 1945, coming and going. 45 was my last year.
And did you ever remember the Veseys now and Wimsey getting together for a session of music in? No, there'd be no session there like that, like that he said with that, no. But I believe he was a good player. Yeah. But I've heard people saying, I think John Wimsey then went to Nottingham, did he? He spent a lot of time around Nottingham. Well,
he died there, he died in an old person's home, and I mean, he did a lot. He used to serve in pubs, John Wimsey used. He served in pubs in Halifax. Because you see, everyone was buying, he come out that to the Irish boys, they'd always, buying him point, And he got onto that, then he'd stop the price of it. He wouldn't take the beer, like, he'd stop the price of it. And he was we getting more of that than he was getting from the landlord.
Yes.
He stopped the price, if you said, one for yourself, you had a pint for yourself. Well, after the while he was at it, he stopped the price of it. At that time it was only 4 pence or 4 pence a pint. But he was greatly liked with John.
Well, of course, at the time you were in England, at home here in Ireland, there was no work either.
No work at all. There's no work nowhere. Nowhere. Any one of those big families were trying to take roads or some contracts to keep going, like, That was it. Wasn't in England that time either. England wasn't, there was no money. There was no money in England, the war started. And then had plenty of money.
Well, you were born in Leitrim South, and in Leitrim South that time, there were a lot of Brennan families.
Yeah.
You can name up some of the families for us that were...
Well, there was the neighbour, Martin Brannan, and they had a distinctive name. There was Bernie Brannan, that was Dan Brannan's father.
Yes.
And then there was, you know, Matt that's up here in the cottage, his father, he was Michael Brannan. And they used to call Dan Bernie Brannan, call him after his father's name.
Yes, yes.
And Michael Brannan, Nyland, they used to call him, because that was his grandmother's name, Nyland.
Yes, yes, yes.
And then Berkeley Brannan, there was another Brannan, Berkeley Brannan. And I don't know what's it, Berkeley was a different name. And Joe Brannan's father, used to call him Drimminja Brannan, because he come from Drimminja.
Oh, right.
That's how all them. They had to make some distinction between them.
And then there was Matt Brennan, was it Matt Dix, yeah?
Oh yes, Matt, it was Dick Brannan, that's right, Dick. Yeah. Dick Brannan, he had 4 or 5 brothers.
And then there was another family further down, was it Mary Pat Dix they called it? Were they another?
Oh, there was Pat Brannan, yeah. That was Mary's father's name, Pat Dick they used to call him. Pat Dick. His father's that much we moving on to.
And there was a family of Brennans at the crossroads there. Or was it?
That was Matt Brannan.
Yeah.
Matt the boss they used to call him.
Yeah.
Matt the boss, his sister was married to extension of Fadó, Molly Brannan. That was Bridgie Johnston's mother. She was Brannan from the crossroads.
Yes, that's right, yes, yes. And then there was Brennans in Drumroe, was there, or
Drumroe?
further up here in Barrow. Were they always there, Brennans? Michael Brennan?
Michael Brannan, no, Grady's there. Michael Brannan married in there. He married Beanne Brannan.
Yes, yes.
Beanne Grady, I should say. Michael, he come from O'Condra. They are Grady's.
And there was a family of Brennans then down here in Mahernor, was it Michael Dickey's?
Michael Dickey's, yeah. There's that family, most of them went to Australia. There's one lad now, I think he's in St. John of God's in Ballymore. That's Michael. He had some related Massey Brannan and Corn, and he was staying with him. But he's in hospital now, he's in Ballymore. Call him Michael Dickey, he was a great rhymer.
And of course we forgot that the Brennans in the post office, Tommy Amby.
That's right, Tommy Amby. Yeah. Tommy was another great sportsman.
And Michael Dickey, now, was he the man, he used to make up poems? Or
He used to, yes, he'd make up rhymes as quick as he talk. Quick as he talk, he'd make them up. Oh, I remember he went around the bog putting out trouble with a white donkey, and she went down. It was sunk in the bog. And he said, he says, she went down. She didn't stay down. She dusted her white coat was white, you know.
Yes, yes.
What do you eat? What better than that now?
Yeah.
He had always rhyming, and the son was just the same. Michael.
Well, then there was a family of Crans that were up on the road here. Where did they come from, or the Crans?
Oh, the Crans. They were there all the time. There was Pat and Mary and Bee, and there was 2 boys in America. They come home like late in life and come home and retire. They built a new house, a bungalow. You see it there now.
They had a small shop, had they?
Had a shop all the time. A small shop. Well, there wasn't in that. You sell tobacco and sweets and little things.
Did you ever hear it said like that the post office was supposed to be in Crans originally, the Chatwood post office? Did you ever hear anything about that?
No.
That, somebody told us along the line that it was either to be there or to be in Brennan's, and Brennan's.
Well, I never heard that. No, if that was said, it was before my time. I never heard anything about it. No, it was there as long as I remember. There was Tommy and Andy and Amby. There was an Amby in it. He went to Omagh, and Andy was married to Peter Nyland, Corrie. Right. He was an electrician, and then he got hurt or something. They lived in Ballysadare out on the Torreira Road there. I know Annie's mother, I think she was Gorman or something from Powellsboro.
I think so, yes, she was.
There was land in there beside Larry Mann's.
But some of those brands we're talking about now were good footballers, like the Burnleys and Dan Burnley and...
Dan used to play, he was full back for Corrie for years, and Matt Brannan was a good, he played county minor. I never seen him anyway, he was a good footballer. He was.
Tommy Amby used to play.
Tommy used to play, and Tommy used to take all they call the 50s, and he never was known to miss a 50. Tommy, he'd hit it with the side of the foot. Happy J-Man, he'd look, happy J-Man, it's gone over. Tommy would always have a couple of points before the match. He'd lie down in the field, and then the crowd would gather around him. He'd beat us on the pail if he wanted to league. He was our great friend of Mr. Brannan's, was Tommy. I think he'd be there, and he'd be watching the game, we're off beside him. And when they meet Tubber Corrie and Corrie could never, it was always an edge. I know one day a crowd was behind it was Joe Kilmartin. He was in the goals for Tubber. And he was he's a tailor, was Kilmartin tailor. And this ball was coming in, and we shouted to the crowd to needle it. And he looked round and the ball hopped into the net. And he ran round behind, he'd have murdered us. He didn't know, all shouted together like him. He didn't know. What did they know? Hopped into the net.
Well, when you stopped going to England, you settled down here, you were very much involved in the shows and
yes, there was the shows of I remember the committee in 1946. 1946, I was a little wait. Yeah.
I would say in the early years now, the shows were much bigger than...
Well, they were, but it used to be held there in Connor's Field, just beside the church there. But there was no jumping there was no jumping that time. There was even pigs and sows and bonnets and all each ran shows. All that.
And there used to be great competition for horses and traps. And
they used.
Horses and carts.
And horses and carts. The turnouts used to be great. There'd be always 3 or 4, I won it twice. I won the last 2 that was in it. The donkey and the horse. Last 2.
And who were can you remember other people that would be...
Well, Sean Towie, Peg Welch, and there was a man from Ballysadare, what was his name? He used to come there. He was McLaughlin, man from Ballysadare used to come. Oh, that's Charlestown. That was early 40s now, I think. No, maybe 48. I went to that and the mayor and trap in it. And Richard Golden, Peg Welch, and Jim Flynn was 4 traps in it. Sorry.
Can you get a shot of it there? That's Charlestown, the square in Charlestown. Around 1940.
40 to 48, I'd say.
48. There are a few horses and traps there. And
it's 4 with all this. That's only a copy taken of one of those.
You can see the big crowd of people that are there.
Yeah, is that him in the centre?
I think it is. I'm not sure.
No, I'm not in the centre. I'm here. See, when we were
Like in the
there. Yeah.
That's it, yeah.
we were called. I got a first in the ring with the mayor, and who were coming down the street, they were shouting for it was round the square, the weighbridge, it was round there the trot was at the show, and Brendan Conley with me, and they had a good bridle, right good bridle, but he said, bridle's good enough, leave it on. I said, wait till I put on the winkers. No, I took his word and we sat in and we come down and the judges come over to us. He says, you're all right, but you're not fully dressed. We're short the winkers.
They had no winkers on.
We're short the winkers.
Oh, you used to go around in a trot
Yes.
with the
Trot.
carrots.
Well, we had a good chance to get it like, because we're after getting it first, you see. In the ring above, on the, you know. And where the winkers on over sound. And after that, you say to me, I used to go and make sure you're fully dressed.
Well, the horses and traps for one thing. Then the horses and carts, how used to judge them? What were the judges?
Oh, harness, to judge everything. They walk round first, then the jog round, and after that the trotted. And the cart was in the carpet examined inside out, harness and everything. And then I might say, you know, the
cart had to be well painted up.
It had. I used to spend months painting it and polishing.
The harness polishing.
And harness polishing, and Saturday sitting on the floor on the morning bed, and I'd be polishing. I had no time anymore, and like, you know, to do it during the day.
Yes.
But you had to have an awful interest in it. You have to have an awful interest in it, you wouldn't do it.
And if I remember rightly, they used to have several decorations, like on the horse.
That's
like
right. Used.
Brass.
That's right, all brass, and even the bell on the cart, that had to be leather and brass. That had to be. I remains with yet up there, outside. Yeah. It took a lot of time and a lot of pain. You know. But there was four, there used to be always 4 or 5. That's McLaughlin from Ballysadare, he used to come there. My father McLaughlin's brother.
Oh, yes.
He used to come there with a horse and cart. But that was in O'Connor's now, that used to be a lot.
Well then, later down, you worked on the council for a while.
Oh, I worked on the council, I did. I worked on the council for 18 years. I worked for 18 years on the council. And the council, in that time, fortnight, it was only made but in the last few years. The council if anyone that's on full time is the best job in this country. So they finish now and Friday at 3 o'clock. And there's no heavy work when I worked, it was above the quarry, and you were breaking stones all day with a sledge. And you were parted like, you put it for yourself.
You had your own pile of stones.
You had indeed.
And that's Chatpool Quarry up here.
Chatpool Quarry, and it was all lorries was filled by hand, 2 men each side. And there was a little man that I used to with me, was Dinny Garrer from Clonacole. A great, the best little man in the. He wasn't too big, but he was all there. And he'd let down the shoulder and bring it round, and he'd go round there is 2 men there, he'd say. There is 2 men. We'd pile up and there'd be nothing to the side, you know. There is 2 men there, he'd say.
And how far you have to cycle to work, I suppose? How far
I cycled from here to Lochtal.
And be out there at 8 o'clock?
You had to be there at 8 o'clock because you were watched. We overseer was on the road the second morning when he was on the road. He was hit out along the road to see. And he says, I thought you'd never cycle as far. I thought it was only good exercise for us. Mick Rowan used to be with us. And the Lord of Mission, that was Johnny White at that time.
And that's the Johnny White that owned the quarry in Corrie.
That's right. Yeah. It was a long, but you didn't mind, like, you know. I think the cycling was the best. Great exercise and great, you know. I wouldn't take it. I wouldn't mind it. Kept you fit.
Well, do you remember any horse races being held now on the Thurla or?
In Thurlamore,
yes.
I remember one. I was in it on my bare feet, and I was in at home, Bowen Leitrim South. And there was a horse, they called him Silent Joe. He had a pipe here in his neck, like it was windbroken, and there was a silver pipe. You know, and I could see it, the hole in it.
Yes.
And I think the Tans ran a horse in it. And Chambers up here, he ran a horse in it, and a dark horse. And old Dr. Flanagan, they showed them, they were on the committee over that. He was found out though. He was found out. Good race in Tullamore. And they used to be racing in Corrie.
Oh, yes. They're well documented, all right, the races in Corrie. And did you ever hear of races being held in Rue?
No, but I was at a flower match in Rome, in Lunny's Field. And Martin Benson was in it. And Martin Benson got a prize in it. Oliver Flannery was flowing in it. Not Oliver, but what he called the Seamus.
Oh, shit, yes.
Seamus had 2 big horses in it. The sod down and the sod up. Seamus. That's when they had the land, you know, Dr. Valley had land. Sure, he had a lot of land in a contract. He owned that land, I think that Tom Mather bought. He had the deanery and he had that land down in Irish, and he had it where Andy Smith was. He had the corner you go down. Sold it all.
And when you were growing up now, can you remember any big political meetings around Tubbercurry or?
Oh, too much. Too much than I've seen. There was there were queer times that because you know, at the time of the blue shirts there were fierce times. You know, I had cousins, and the cousins wasn't speaking, and around the time of election they were all on knife edge, a lot. And we were in a meeting in my law, and it was at that old Stonewall there down at the church. Frank Carter, one of the last two was in it. But they had murdered it all together. It was after the shooting in, first time I think about the shooting in Powellsboro. He was going to be pulled off the wall and all that. He defied when he put his hand around to the hip and don't come any further and all this cry. And they were fierce. He'd come to him out, he'd go round and down through the wood. He wouldn't come down with them. No ways.
Well, I suppose particularly after that shooting incident, everybody was being careful. Or
well, I think I don't know. Was telling on a lot of that.
Well, you went to my last school, that was the yes, isn't it? Patrick Brennan was your teacher.
Patrick Brennan, Miss Brennan and Miss McGuinn.
Miss McGuinn, yes.
Miss Brennan and Miss McGuinn and Patrick Brennan.
Of course, you remember the fairs too very well, like in Tubbercurry.
Oh, I remember the fairs. Well, and a lot of old people selling cattle and they didn't know the price, they would ask them about maybe 20, 30 pounds above the price, and they'd have to keep coming down and they'd sell them cheap and then.
Yes. And when you mentioned the old people, like, there was always a few people out for making bargains.
Oh, there was always a few. Well, the dealers that like someone to you know, say, to come in and say something. I remember one selling a cow one and green, and this man had his head in, and he was waiting for someone to make something, to make, you know, a differ or a divide or something, and he was so vexed of it. This man said, "Now," he says, "What do you say what the dummy says? What do you say what the dummy says?" He pointed to this man. He said he never opened his mouth at all.
Yes.
And he walked away. "What do you say?" He says, "What the dummy says." It used to be a good crack in the fairs.
And these tangers that used to come out the road meeting the people, like, what they call them, blockers or something like that, they used to hang on to certain
Oh, they'd
people.
hang on, and then a lot of them tangers would stay. If they got an old man and a woman selling, they'd stay. One would go, he'd go away, and there'd come another one, they'd be ready to come back. One was mates. And they'd keep at that all day until they get them at their own demand. I've seen it happen.
There's an awful unfair.
There's a lot of them gone now. Because
And these guys that would be trying to make the bargains used to get a drink out of it, or what was their reward?
Oh, there was one man I knew, and he was that's what he used to go to the fairs for. He'd go like, and he always would like to be in a bargain. And this man, would I have to mention the name?
Well, it might be better not, maybe.
No, it might. But I know this man was selling he was selling this animal. Well, the man that was wanting to make it eat, he called it the hot go on, he said, and sell your horses, you have a good customer. And he kept saying that, and he was trying, and the man said to him, what are you talking about? He said, it's not a horse, he said, it's a mare. But he said, did you ever see anything more like a horse? Back to him. Yeah. I see, anything more like a horse. He met a man, he was coming home one evening, he met a man who was coming in. It was, used to be 2 fairs, pig fair on a Tuesday, and the cattle fair on a Wednesday. And he met a man coming in, he was from Gurchin, and his cow, used to hear him, we say it's Joe Cawley's now. He said, do you know anywhere, he said, I could get this cow put up for the night? I'm your man, he says, I'm your man, come on with me. And he brought him down where the bank is now, so that was owned by Charlie Medallion. And he was well got there, and he knew the stables and he knew everything. Oh man, he brought him in, got the cow in the stable. He said, all right now, if I could get a bit of hay. I get hay, there was a loft over the cow when he went up the stair and threw down a load of hay. The man said, you take a drink? Indeed I do, he says. So they went into Charlie in the pub, and he called a pint for himself. And that time they used to call the medium, that was the glass for this man. That was all right. He called again, and he called the same. And the man, he put over his hand, he said, hold on, man, it's my turn this time, and he took the pint off and he left him the glass. It was the man that told me that served that told me that story.
You heard that story before, very good. Like it was the man who brought in the cow, bought the drinks.
Aye, but he was so mean like that he wouldn't buy this man a pint. He only bought him a glass and a pint for himself. He come up the second time, he put over, he says, hold on, he says, it's my turn this, and he took the pint and left him the glass. I said that, but he said, I was better pleased than that, he said, it happened.
And of course, at that time when the fairs were being, a lot of the cattle went by rail from the...
They did. There was a station, they went to the station in Tubbercurry and they were rail, they're all rail. There was no lorries, they're all rail. Yeah.
And those that didn't go by rail, they had to walk them long distance.
Walk them. Well, they used to walk them from Tubber to Ballymote and below Ballymote. There was a lad there, he's still alive here quietly, he was the drover. I seen him often down going on that hurry to 40 or 50 cattle with them. For all round Ballymote, all these dealers, or the men were buying them for grass. The Kilogans and the Canes and Sonny Kilmartin and all the crowd. Jack Costello.
But finally now, do you remember any of the old cures like that they used to have for horses or cattle, like for coals or any of the old cures?
Well, I don't know, well, for horses now, there was some green, what they used to call it, they used to give to horses for worms. It was like palm, green little, you know, get the name out.
And I think when cattle had with water, they had an old cure for that, hadn't they?
Oh, salt. Salt they used to give them. Salt.
Treacle or something.
Treacle and salt. Yeah. Rather that old cures, like that old.
And then when cattle had sore eyes, you used to crush a blue bottle or...
Well, I done it myself. The bottom of a blue bottle, you get the double bottom. And you make it into as fine as ever you could. Into ashes. And there was some powder then you put through it, what's this to call it? Wasn't there a boracic powder or something?
That's right.
And they blow that into the base side with a quill. You know that to quill the cut and blow that in and with the rub and to take.
James Murray is visiting Peter Welch's house in Conway. They're talking about the musicians that they knew. In particular, they're talking about Peter's father, Frank, and Paddy Sweeney. Earlier on, that when Sweeney would be learning a tune, that he'd have the fiddle on, or he was digging spuds or something.
Oh, he'd have the fiddle out, and especially when he goes to the bog, he'd always have the fiddle to the bog. Oh yeah.
Very good.
Oh yes.
And if he thought he would tune on
oh yes, he did. Yeah, he'd be a good while cutting the trout. Oh, he was. I remember him coming to our house. I remember him coming, at night time, and then we'd be all gone to bed, and they'd still be playing away. They'd play there all night. And then they used to play together an awful lot, and they went away one time, and they stayed away nearly they stayed over a week away, like playing around different halls, and they played in Colony, Ballymote, Corrie, and they used to have a wide area all around. But I heard a tale about them on they came in they were coming home, and forever they were out of Clare where they were playing on that, but there was a fair in a Clare, and there was John Wimsey was with them too, and they came to the fair, into the fair. It was a big fair.
Yes.
And Wimsey, Sweeney used to wear a hat, and he put the hat down on his eyes and went round. He bought every pig at the fair and gave them great prices. Oh yeah, the people was all congratulating at the, on the great buyer that was and everything. But they didn't know this, either my father or Wimsey, they were drinking it.
Well, they didn't know this was going on.
They didn't know this was going on at all. Well, now since Sweeney came up, we better get out of here as quick boys as we can.
There was good reason to be going.
Yeah.
And going back again now to your father, you used to keep a shop, Peter, when you
Oh, we used. Oh yeah, keep a small country shop. Yeah.
And I suppose I know the population of Powellsboro at that time as a townland was much greater than it is now.
Oh, it was. Oh, it was a lot. Yeah.
And now, just going to John Wimsey to fit him into the picture, would he have been younger than your father?
Oh yes.
He would, yes.
Oh, he was a lot younger. Oh, John was a good few years younger. Oh,
John
yeah.
would be something in the same age bracket as Sweeney, would he have been? I think.
Oh, Sweeney was older than
Was
John.
he? Yes.
Oh yes, Sweeney was older than John. He was. Sweeney, well, my father was older than Sweeney.
Your father was older than Sweeney?
He was. Yeah. Sweeney, I think it was 26 or 27, 19,
when he
1926 or 27, he went through America.
That's right, yes.
Some of them years, he went through America. But he played I was playing in Ballyhead one time. I used to play in a little band up there. And this man, now I knew his name, but I forget it now. But he was in America a long time, and he came up talking to me. He says, I believe you came from Sligo. So he said, did I know Paddy Sweeney? Well, I said I did. I lived probably next door to him. Well, he said, I knew Paddy very well in America. And he started talking about the reels. These two reels, he says, he put on the tape in 1928 with the council reel and the Bird in the Bush. Now he says, I don't know, did he make the Bird, who composed the Bird? But he said Sweeney, so it was him that composed the concert
reel. Yes.
So he was playing the concert reel before ever he went to
America.
Yes.
And he said that he was at a concert one night that Sweeney was at, and Michael Coleman was at it. And Sweeney went up and played, and Sweeney was a loud player,
yes.
Like a strong player.
Strong player, yes.
And Michael Coleman was to come up next, and Michael Coleman, he said, I was actually listening to Michael Coleman. There was no good of him going up.
After Sweeney
his music could be no good, he said.
Yes.
He said he was a light player, and he said he would not go up.
Sweeter player, maybe.
He could not play after Sweeney.
No, so you said, Pete, that you'd play in your father, they'd fill a hall, the two of them, like. You often said that they'd fill a hall, like you're playing your father when they're no amplification or nothing.
Oh, they'd fill the hall.
They were powerful players.
Oh, they were.
Yeah.
Oh, they were. Well, my father had a tour, I don't know, to listen to him playing, it wasn't a loud tour, like now
yes.
But now if he was playing with anybody, You'd always
know
hear
that he was, yes.
You'd always hear that tone.
You would.
Very clear. You'd hear
yes.
him very, lovely tone.
Yes, yes.
Now, like and I don't believe I heard him when he was
at his best.
At his best.
Yes.
But he was really a good player.
No, he was. No, anyone that was playable.
Now, I know you said that he got his music, or he learned some of his music from somebody in Newcastle.
He did. I think he was called, I don't know, I think it's Kane or he was called.
Yes.
Some old man.
This was your father, Pete?
I got a lot of music from that. But I heard him say the first time he was riding on a donkey coming out from town, he said a young lad, he's about 10 years or so. But he said he had a reel in his head anyway, but he had the tune, bought a tin cushion for a penny in Trouble-Curry, and he had the tune left when he was at home. He said that was the start of music. He played a good bit in America now, like.
Oh, he was in America as well?
Oh, he was.
Oh, yeah.
A long time in America. He went to England. He'd be only about 14 years or 15 when he went to England first. And he worked his way over on a ship to America.
To America, from England, please.
From England. And there he got married in America. He was a good fellow in America. There was two brothers born in
America.
And
was it before that, no, Peter used to play mostly with Sweeney? Was it before he went to America?
Oh, no.
Oh, no, after he came home?
After that. Oh, yes.
After he came back,
Oh, yes. After that.
Yes.
Oh, he came home, well, he must be home and... he'd be home and... I'd say in the 1930s. Oh, no,
20s, I'd say.
Before 20. I was born in 1980.
Oh, sure.
Thomas Vermeer was supposed to play with the fairies.
Yes, that he was an exceptional player.
Exceptional player, yeah. And Thomas was this night coming home from a dance. And there's a castle in Maharanor, castle, you know, in Frischel's place, a big round castle.
The rooms are still there.
The rooms are still there, yes.
Well, Thomas, he said he was on the verge of going into the castle.
Yes.
And all of a sudden he seen this road going, and it was a straight road, he didn't know where it was going.
Yes.
But he was went on it.
Aye.
And he landed up into this place, and he said there was the finest music and dancing ever you've seen. And there was a seat for him, and he was put sitting down. And he said he thought people he knew them, and then he didn't know them. And
yes, I remember you telling me that before, sure.
That. But anyways, he played there all night, and around 3 o'clock or so, 3 o'clock came, all went, and he was sitting, in the middle of a fourth. But anyways, he used to be playing at the dances after that, you know, and all that. But when a certain time had come at night, now he says, I have to go to another party.
And he'd always go away.
And he said he'd go and he used to play. The claim, now I don't know, but the claim it was true.
Oh, it possibly was.
Oh, yes.
Now the tide of wine on his fiddle, the fairies, he was tuning his fiddle one night, and this fairy came up to him and put a fine round the fiddle and tied it. And all ever he had to do after that was shift
up and down for tuning.
Did you hear Feely at that?
I did hear Feely at that.
It's a true,
I did hear Feely at that.
Yeah.
It was like the things that they use on the guitar now.
Yes.
A fret or whatever they call them for pushing up and down.
Aye.
That he'd move that to higher or lower the tone of the fiddle.
He had no
I
tune
did
on
hear Feely saying that.
Yeah.
Well, Feely had his fiddle wherever it went to Pete.
Had
Oh, he had, big red fiddle with it. Was a big green transfer on the back of it.
Yeah.
He got it from Owen, God be good to Owen.
Yes.
Son.
Yeah.
But I even heard Johnny Watts saying that he was supposed to be the daddy of the fiddle players. Like he was supposed to be a remarkable fiddle player.
My father said he was a young lad, and that there was a dance somewhere on Thomas Kilmare was in it, and he said he was playing. This was before he went to England.
Oh, this is really going back.
He'd be really going back.
Aye.
But Thomas asked him up to play a tune, but he started playing with him. He kept him there all night. He said the got on great.
And he was an old man this time.
He was an old man in Thomas Kilmerton.
But a fabulous player.
Yeah.
Now the Kilmertons we're talking about were great tradesmen, I believe, and we referred there to Owen Kilmerton. Now Owen used to fix watches and clocks,
that's right.
everything like that.
Yes.
And the Feely that was being referred to there was a man called Johnny Feely, and he's not too long dead, Lord mercy on him. I remember seeing him playing very well. I think himself and yourself used to play an awful lot together.
We used to play a lot together.
Yeah.
Well, about Owen Kilmerton used to make a little drop, you know.
Well, yeah, punching, yeah, yes, very good.
But they brought me, like, they used to fix watches, and people used to come into him, you know, at night and for the watches.
Yes.
But he had the still set up over the fire, and all greatly done up with a blow lamp and everything, and the punching started coming, and my job was to empty it and keep it into and put it into a chair.
Oh yes.
I was putting it into the chair, but it didn't taste that. Taking a drop. And of course the next thing I fell off. And the next thing was that the punching landed down beside Owen at the fire.
Oh, he had it
upstairs.
He had it
upstairs.
That's a good one, I indeed. And I think, you know, when you mentioned the Gannons there, they were tradesmen as well, the Gannons, very good tradesmen.
Oh, yes.
And actually, I think it was you told me, Peter, that they used to work with a fellow called Pat O'Dowd. Is that right?
That's right.
And I think Willie Goolan told me that they actually built a lot of schools in the area,
Pat
including my last school.
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh yeah, they were playing Father and Sarah Ann and Sweeney. They were playing. That was in, you know, what we call Jack's
Spare.
Jack's
Yes.
house.
Yes.
There was a dance there in the house.
Yes.
But anyways, like she said, the father said Sarah Ann was giving plenty to Sweeney, like playing on Sweeney Rose's fiddle.
Yes.
Put it up and
a bit. Yes.
But the played one tune was Sarah Ann snapped the fiddle off him and tune, no play back.
She tuned it down again.
Oh yeah.
I remember you telling me that tune.
Yes.
So that shows you she was some player.
Oh, she was a good player. She was a great player. Like Sweeney, like they'd have some more touches on her.
Right. Yes.
But they knew she was very good.
Great.
And so was, you know, Sarah Hunt was a great player. Oh, she had a great bow hand. You'd love to see her playing like
Yes.
you know, but anyone know what she'd do you good to see her.
Watch her play.
To watch her play, because she, you know, she ring the bow and you'd hear that
ringing across the bass.
Playing away. You won't hear that today.
No, that's what's you will not, Peter. You will not hear that today. You can't do that now.
You'd hear the bass ringing
and
there
and they're gone on to another string.
Gone on to another tune.
That's right. That's it. Yes. That's it. Style of playing round Powellsboro and round our area to Killarney now.
Oh, they were entirely different.
Because you'd notice now when you went playing with them, you'd have to change.
The Powellsboro music now, and you could take in a bit of Cashel, well, even to Cashel,
it was more lofty, like.
Well, we had more now, like, the great players around. You had Sarah Ann O'Connor, you had Mrs. Matts Hunt.
Yes.
You had Thomas Kilmare.
Yes.
Like, they were built, the music was built around them.
That's right, yes.
They were built around that kind of area.
Yes.
Now you had Paddy Flynn in Coyle, Charlie used to play.
Yes.
Paddy was a lovely
Beautiful,
player.
sweet player.
Lovely, sweet player.
Yes, I remember hearing them now.
Yes, yes.
You won't get players like that Calvary today at all.
No,
you won't
no.
anything like that.
No.
And I believe Charlie Flynn, now I never heard Charlie playing the fiddle, but I believe he was a good...
Lovely fellow. I remember Feely telling me he used to play the harp, that he was the only one around this area ever played the harp.
Yeah.
But Charlie
and
played the harp. And the flute.
Oh, he used to play the flute.
Aye.
Yeah.
Imagine. But it was a different style, of course, region.
The Powellsboro, they were great players. The Corleys too, you know,
yes,
they were good players.
Corleys.
Used any of the Hunts play, Owen Hunt now or any of them? No, I don't think so.
No.
Owen's name was associated with the Powellsboro band now, whether he used to...
Oh, that'll be Sean's vet.
Yes.
No,
yes.
No, I never heard them to play.
No.
He might be some marching band.
Yes, but not in that.
They had something for it, or... But I never heard them to play.
No.
Larry Martin, who was...
I remember
Larry Martin. He made his own fiddle and...
He did. I remember going down with Feely one night to Larry Martin. That's right. He
made his own fiddle and played.
And it was a different... You had Paddy Stinchin's father, old Peg. Peg Stinchin.
Peg was a very good... Different now. They used to play, and I got to play an awful lot along with Paddy Stinchin's father.
Yes.
He was a great, lively
player. Yes.
Lofty.
Great lofty.
Very lofty and lively.
Yes.
What you call good flute.
Oh, good hearty flute.
Oh, very
yes,
good.
He was, and had a lot of music.
Oh, yeah. And he had a lot of music, and had it correct.
Yes, he had it. I remember going down. Yes, he lost his sight, the poor fellow. But he was a nice...
And like, where you used to get the tunes from? You know, in other words, you know, that's a good many years back now. Where did they actually, those tunes originally?
Well, I don't know where they came from.
Handed down, I don't know.
Oh, yes. And she said she had no one at home, but she said she had one of her father she gave it. Well, she says, I don't know a lot about music, says Mary. But she says, they tell me, she says, that Daddy was the best player.
Someone else had said
that
Willie Gannon was supposed to be a mighty player, a beautiful player.
That he was the best player. I think, if I remember now, Johnny Golden telling me that too.
That's right.
That Willie Gannon was better than Tom.
That's someone we forgot.
I remember Willie Gannon played in Chaffpool now, but I wouldn't know. I remember playing along with Frank Gannon from
Monabrina.
From Monabrina.
Yes, Mickey's father, yes. Yes.
But I wouldn't know his music like
No, not at all, no.
Long time ago. My father always said he liked playing with Big Gorman.
Like Big Gorman, yes.
No, like, I know the night he was in McCoy's, a good few asked him to play, but when Big Gorman asked him to play,
he played with Gorman. Yes, he did.
He was very choosy, that, like, there was a player who
he played with, yes.
He had no time now for a lot of players and took Cashel.
No,
but he was very much that way. He was very sore, more than Sweeney. He was very sore on his music.
How would he have been with you now when you were...
No.
No, he always said, Pete, he'd never learn you much now.
No. I was playing, you know, you'd have a tune half and you had no way to learn it or anything, and you might think you had it off. And,
yes.
And I'd be playing this tune. Well, for God's sake, will you stop? He says, you're a disgrace to music.
Tell Mickey, remember, Pete, what he said to yourself and feeling?
We were playing a
real
below. No, you know, both was, Feely was sure he had it right, and I was sure I had it right too. Playing this reel, and we played it away and finished it. Silent type of man, he was yours. Well, he says, good lad, boy, but fair play to you, you're not too fish full of notes. You know, really like this, James, I don't know, like...
yes, no, this is the time, this is the one to get.
But I don't know, I might be able to play
Ah,
it.
sure, Pete,
It's an old thing.
Yes.
It wouldn't be played around this part of the country.
That wouldn't be played now, anyhow.
No.
But she had an awful lot of them, Pete. And that was what he used to play a piece.
A lot of the music was the travelling musicians coming in, like, you know, the fellas travelling around and...
Oh yeah, well they used to come on, now the fair day in Tubbercurry, that's years ago now. I didn't see much, I did see some of them come on when I was a young lad like that. But before my time now, I used to hear my father talking about it. He used to work and Tubbercurry.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, but he said he was, this day they came into Matt to find these two players.
Yes, yes.
And Matt sent down for my father to come up, and he got a, well, I don't know whether it's in Fushler or Fruity, what he got. But I know he played with them all that evening.
All that he did. Those travelling
musicians.
Yeah, because there was great respect for the travelling musicians at that time.
Oh, there was, of course. Oh, there was. Oh, there was. Yeah.
If you were a musician, that seemed to have great respect for you. Like,
oh, yes.
Oh, there was.
But I suppose you'd have to be a good musician now to be, you know, I'd say that the middle musician might be.
No, you want to be a fair musician.
Oh, you would, that's right.
You would.
Because I assume there were so many of them around, like, you know, that the competition would...
Oh, definitely. Oh, definitely.
I remember now, he spotted Mick Flynn, you know, like Mick Flynn when he was playing, he was going around with the Ran.
Yes.
He was playing it in Fush, and I remember he came towards my father, brought him into the house, and he heard him playing.
Yes. He knew that he had...
He knew that he had it. And he said that'll be a good player.
Yes.
And he was.
He was.
Mick Flynn was a
great flute player. I remember that he said to Mick, and nobody has it now. The record that he made with Killorn. And there's no, I had all that from America, and I don't know where it went to.
I think it was in Larry Martin's mother. There was myself and Ned Brown, the Lord of Mercy on him, is dead. And there was Jim Hunt, and I think he's dead too. That was Michael Hunt there.
Yes.
And there was another one. There was Batical Martin. But we were at the wake, and we all, you know, they used to play pipes and go around. Clay pipes and tobacco. But we weren't supposed to smoke it, but we were whipping the tobacco and putting it in our pocket. We whipped the pipe a piece too. We go to school the next morning, you know, the old school,
yes.
You know, like the hall and the last.
The hall, yes.
We went in there, and we fast smoke, but we started smoking. And the next thing, the boys got sick. That was it. But anyways, we never missed that. We seen this fella looking in the window and us all sick there. Patrick Brown, the teacher.
The teacher? Oh!
burst us up to school. And then, Mr. Carey was very sure. Mr. Carey up on up on the forum and be flogged and everything. No, says Brian, no, the boys are bad enough. No. Well, let nothing. I've never said one thing she was all day or asked us, but was laughing. You know, Patrick, how he'd,
Is that
you
right?
know, like he'd be going on with the mouth. I just, well, boys, he says, he had a great smoke. And he enjoyed.
He must have been an awful nice man, Pete. I heard a few talking about him.
Well, he was, could be so enough,
yes.
but there was some good points.
In him,
And if you were a good, I used to be middling good little footballer, like, oh, he had a great time for me. We were playing, I remember we were playing Trouble young lads, there was a few was playing. But I happened to play, but score a good few points. Well, I could do anything.
You could do it, yes.
Oh, anything.
He had a great interest in football.
Oh, he had, if you were a footballer at all, you were...
Bees knees.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
But there must have been great excitement around that time. Well, maybe, you know, when he was trying to get those football teams together.
Oh, there was. Well, sure, football was the only thing that time. There was no other sport like
No.
to be running like or that or cycling, football and cycling. And
Yes.
that was all like, there was no such thing as soccer or
Oh, not at all.
anything like that.
Not at all.
But it was all football.
It's
And,
all football, right?
yeah.
Only idea.
Oh yeah, Mixney used to drive. But I'll tell you about Patrick had a car. And there was only two could drive the car around it was Frank Fawley, Trouble Curry and our Tom, and it was Frank Fawley and Tom to drive.
Yes.
Tom used to hope, Tom let him to drive, he used to work to drive something on the council, I think it was the Crushers or something.
Yes.
But he let him to drive the car anyway.
Yes.
But Patrick used to have Tom for this car when it was Sunday, you know. There was a rope tying the back axle or some way a rope was tying the back axle to something. And it was a whistle they had for the horn. but a whimsy, John Whimsy, that used to be telling me all this like, and Tom would be go round the corner. Now Tom, watch the rope, bind the rope up. After that they'd be coming, who was the whistle? But anyway, Tom, they were going to some football on Sunday, and Tom went up early to Patrick, and Tom never told him he brought the car into Fall to have a look at it or something before they go on this, he went off into town. But Patrick was half shaved out on the road. Did you see any lad in a dyke? Did you see any car and a lad in a dyke down the road? Up and down the road. But it was great about the whistle, and when she says no one would have the whistle,
No.
but they wanted, and then for they wouldn't want it, the whistle was
Big go.
Good God,
yeah. But he said that car never used to let them down.
No.
Car never let them down, but he said sure you wouldn't meet any another car on
Not
that.
at all,
No.
not at all.
Only in that car.
You remember the time too that Johnny Flynn had a car?
Oh, you said seven.
I said 7.
I
Right,
do
yes.
indeed.
Oh, you did, sir.
And I remember our friend too. He used to work on board, so he was a mad driver. And Fran and Dennis Kildee, I remember they were going down there at Cranch, down that round, so they went up on a hedge and into the hospital. But John Feely was telling me they were coming home one night with Johnny Flynn. And there was asses on the road, and Johnny was driving himself. And of course, Johnny had only one eye.
That's right, you'd have covered the bob, eh?
But he crashed, he went over one of the asses, and Johnny said, "My dear, that was very near it." Yes, they knew that was it.
That was very neat.
And I heard it said, I can't recall it really, somebody asked Johnny what make of the car, what was the make of the car?
Yeah.
And he says, by the days my boy dies at 7. It's good. Yes, yes.
That was the number, right?
That is at 7, yes.
Oh, well, that care, that care used to get went everywhere. Was it mighty care?
Yes.
Oh.
Well, you could imagine it like it in
And
those
there'd
times.
be no one, what is supposed to put himself?
Cross ditches and hedges and everything. The skill day too used to be dry with it.
And Mick Conlon in later years had a care. He used to do a lot of hackney work.
Oh, he had.
That was Jim's film.
They can eat an awful
Oh
road.
no, that'd be, I know who you're talking about.
He had an awful
and
road to come out. There used to be into the house in that whole
The riverbed, really.
road, and the Lord rest of them used to call him Red. They'd be directing him on him. It was the first. That was the first care ever I sat in, was Mick Conlon.
Mick Conlon's, yeah.
And he had another brother, Peg. I think they used to work at the town. Was it Peg that used to work? There was some of them working in a Glitter's garage.
Right.
I don't know was Mick or not. I remember going to school and I thought it was, I never forget, I thought it was wonderful, the ditches running outside. I always forgot.
All the things you remember.
I know.
Dear God Almighty.
Well, I don't know, the Galway.
Galway Rambler, right. Lovely. Well, how else can you have to repeat it? Right.
Oh, yeah.
Do that after.
His father had a shop in Powellsboro, and he actually used to run a travelling shop. And this is a photograph of the travelling shop, which was pulled, of course, by 1 horsepower. And as you can see, Francis Welch, grocer and confectioner, I presume, Powellsboro.
John James.
And it was actually, this would have been manufactured and put together by the Hunts of Powellsboro, John James Hunt and Owen Hunt. And I presume they did the painting on it.
What year would that be about now, I wonder?
That would be approximately 1920s, would it be 20?
Oh, long before.
Long before that.
Oh, this would be in the 19... that would be in the 1930s.
Would it be later than that?
Yeah, well, say 1920s, late
Yeah.
20s, 30s,
Yes.
early 30s.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they say the house in the background would have been your own homestead.
No, that was belonged to, that's Michael McGowan's house, Mick McGowan's house in Leeds.
In his 90th birthday, Willie Goulden is shown here in the church with his nephews and nieces, his many other relations and neighbours.
The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you all. Good evening, everybody. And today is a very special evening, an evening that we are here to celebrate. And Eucharist means thanksgiving or celebration, and every Mass is a celebration. But this is a special celebration for Willie on the occasion of his 90th birthday. And we're delighted that members of his family have come to be with him this evening. Some have come from England, and we welcome them in particular, and all those who have made the effort to be here this evening. We welcome all his friends and neighbours. I know he is very proud of those friends and neighbours who call on him often and who make life so meaningful for him. So we ask God to bless him at this Mass. We ask God to come and share these moments with us. We ask God to give us hope for the future, that all of us as we go through life may come closer to him and may know him in a deeper and in a more wonderful way. And we be conscious that it is God himself we're inviting here on our altar. So as we prepare ourselves to welcome him, let us first ask for his forgiveness and pardon. I come baptismal register inside of my house. William Goulden of Powellsboro was born to John Goulden and Bridget Owens on the 4th of January 1906 and baptized on the 7th of January with sponsors Dominic Owens and Mrs. Fleming. Willie tells me that the correct name for the area stretching from Louis Martin's house down there, across this corner and up as far as Johnny MacDonough's, is Thome na Collia. And in his days, it had 12 homes. Michael O'Connor's, John Flynn's at the entrance to his road, Anne and Martin Duffy in the house which is occupied by our neighbour from England, Mike Flynn's, Mick Flynn's, which would be the father of Mary Bridget, John Goulden's, Willie's father, Charlie Flynn and Tom Flynn, who lived behind him, John Mulholland, Johnny MacDonagh, Tom Welch, who would be the grandfather of Mary Welch, Pat O'Connor and Dan O'Connor, who lived where the road turns into the sandpit down opposite Tommy Brennan's. Willie could list those off. He said everyone knew them. That was the way they were listed off at the stations. That was the way they were listed off at the collections. So obviously the collections were read out in those days. And Willie grew up with his sister Mary Ann and his brother John, both of whom are now deceased. And he went to Moylott National School, which we now call the Old National School, but was then a new building built in 1890. There he was taught by Patrick Brennan and Mr. Cahill, who has been succeeded by his grandnephew, our present Mr. Cahill. And Willie tells me himself that he wasn't a great scholar, and that he left off in 1918, which on my calculation would mean he was only 12 years old, when his father was in hospital for 6 weeks. He was needed to do the farm work. And he remembers well the start of World War I, though he wasn't quite sure whether it was the 4th or the 10th of August, and those historians among us can look that up. He remembers the Black and Tan War, when he was a member of the Scouts, who used to look out and give warnings if the Black and Tans were coming. And then he remembers the Civil War. In 1923, he went working for Pat Doherty of Chaffpool House, who had got that area of the Armstrong estate when it was divided by the Congested District Board. And he went doing farm work and general repairs to the house because it was in old condition and needed repairs. repairs, and he worked there for the best part of 11 years. It seems he established a reputation for being good at woodwork and building, and himself and his brother John branched out as contractors in the 1930s, and they built houses in a connery, and he says there was plenty of work in a connery because them people were sort of well-heeled. And they also built Michael O'Connor's present home in 1936. Well, he tells me with some pride that he made all the windows and the doors and the stairs in that house from basic log planks of timber. In 1938, he went working as a maintenance man to the Maris Convent, Tubbercurry, and he stayed there for 18 years. He worked on the building of the new wing in that convent, which houses the hall, and he did most of the woodwork in that. He spent his last years at home farming, caring for his mother, who was 92 when she died in 1968. He also tells me of involvement in the community. When the church was repaired in 1950 under Father Martin, when he worked with the committee, which tried to raise funds for that particular work. And he tells me that Jim Connolly, Pat Egan, Todd Harn, Dan and Paddy McAllister, Michael Moffat and himself ran very successful Cayleys in the school. He said they were so successful that they often had two bands going in two different rooms, and that they charged 2 shillings as entry on these Sunday nights. The only trouble was that they had to shift all the seats out of the school, get them ready for the dancing, and then when the people went off home at night, they had to put them all back again, so that it was a lot of work and a lot of effort. The bands were local musicians. They paid them if the crowd turned up. If they didn't, they got nothing. But he said that often they might make as much as 10 shillings a night. And then showing that he was a little bit of an entrepreneur. He said they used to get minerals from Henry's in Charlestown, and they used to double the price of the minerals and sell them and make a good profit. When he talks about things of another age, the time when the pint was tuppence, when he used to go to Tubbercurry and bring home a half-gallon of porter in a flagon. He feels that maybe in the modern age that taxes are too heavy, and that the result is that we have to import things, whereas we should be much more self-sufficient. But the thing that would make, I think, makes an impression on everyone who goes to visit Willie in his home is the genuineness of the welcome. Everyone is welcome. Everyone is received with a smile. There is warmth there.
Good evening, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. Willie is now going to make this the official celebration of the 90th birthday. He's going to cut the cake. So, come on, Willie. Oh, wait a minute, no, we cut it there. Yes, straight away. Well done, well done. He's going at it straight across. That's it. The 3 women in his life, he said. Oh, very good, very good. I think he wants you to do Willie, I tell you, you should blow out the candles. You want to blow out the candles, now you get this, John. Now, come on, Willie. Want the girls here will help you. Come on, look, blow out these candles. Come on. Well done. You feel it?
That's only one.
No, out you go. Come on. Out you go. No. Out you go. No. That's it.
How are you getting on? That's good, that's good.
You're coming up to see the Mile Off Bell.
I'm taking
Those jokes and jokes.
My God, that's
The light is just now. You come great.
And but you're fairly.
Of course I am. I don't have to go out like I used to.
Dad, when you met the man was away, she can probably do sister workshop again. I had tried the ground.
But fair going.
It was going up to Flagstone, one over there before you, police us.
Oh yeah, good man, good man. You're a great man to come. Did you have a look at it?
No,
not yet.
We're just up.
Take your time.
I didn't get in time.
Take your time. I'll be back before you come, before you're gone.
Well,
I just want to bring some people down to the school for a couple of minutes.
Thank you, thank you.
keep it as peaceful.
And that just shows how she made the leather in the centre and then it's the plate from inside to the outside and then they round it. And then this is just the glass, blue and red glass.
Yes. Oh, there was coloured glass.
Are you picking up there?
I come in closer.
I presume you remember hearing about Johnny finding the belt, did you?
I did, I don't remember well in that, but I heard it.
And what was the reaction of people in the area?
No, there wasn't a great reaction probably until John Nicholson started. And then I think we said that Mary Kate, Mrs. Maid, her maid's wife,
yes.
And she was more to the rain.
Yeah. And somebody said Jack Anderson was involved as well.
I could be so, but I don't know. Jack was well, he was a man that he was a stage man, good.
Yes, that's right.
Oh, he could be. But John Nicholson was a man that should never have gone out as well as Jack Anderson 18.
Yeah.
Only for John Nicholson.
Yeah.
John was a comic though.
Yes.
John Nicholson. He
Well,
most peculiar.
but having looked at it now yourself, what do you think of it? What's
Oh, it's okay. It's an awful thing to think you can mow the ball. Sure, it was one of the greatest pieces of old history relics that could be got.
And the grace intricacy and the craftsmanship in it, you cannot see totally that.
But if I'd brought another padding glasses I might be able to be getting close.
Reinald, what is the work actually called, the decoration on it? The particular for the craftsmanship?
Well, the silver there's stamped silver foil, so it's a very thin sheet of silver, like a sheet of silver paper, that's pressed onto a mould that would have the pattern. Like these ones here, they're spirals, and it's the same pattern you find that on high crosses of the same date or on Book of Kells. But whether it has any symbolic meaning, we just don't know. But it's found on metalwork and it's found on stone carving and it's found.
You were working in Chapel House. Was there many working in it at that time?
In 1923, it went into it, November 1923. And the first level of the first crowd that I did, but it was 19.
19.
19. But that failed. So the spring came, and those people came there working for timber. It was a bad year.
Yes.
And I think, and you see that timber and put in more. Old timber they didn't, that used to want to get out. Well,
firewood, like.
Firewood.
Yes. And what would they have been doing? They'd have been doing maybe repairing walls?
Everything. No, there was not. There wasn't. Well, there was a couple of men there used to build a stone wall to be built, a raw stone wall.
Yes.
Might be in the Merton fence, it could be a Merton fence. He used to throw the fences, called just a board built. The clay fence, the sand fence, and maybe replace some old stones. God knows out some other old fence. So if you think it was a lick, but it used to be out that game.
And there was a wood there in Chatspool at that time?
Oh, there was a big wood, of course. There was a big wood that come out. And, oh, Lord, so, yeah. Well, I know who was Chatspool. I don't know whether it was Armstrongs. I don't think so, because Armstrongs came from Tipperary too. Some of the money was the old captain, his captain's father. He belonged to Tipperary. He's called Mayall from Tipperary.
Yes.
And I believe he came from Tipperary to there. I didn't ever hear any title on him, but the next man who succeeded him was his son. He was in the Royal Navy. I think he was Captain James Armstrong, the Royal Navy. He was lame, I believe.
Yes.
No, I only heard the stories. Then there came another fella, he was supposed to be some relation, Maskin. He was captain too, but the it was in the release. He was a captain, he know whether that's right or wrong, no.
Yes, yes.
Or is that the story? That was in the militia he was.
Right.
And he was there. It was he sold it out into the country. Well, for the years Phibbs lived in it before it was sold in. Phibbs or Dubeg.
Yes.
Charles Phibbs. And he built the house that's in Dubeg now. That new house wasn't owned, I believe it was he built it, Charles Phibbs. And he was boycotted, but he was in Chatspool. Chatspool, there was an officer's residence above and below. It's like in the foundation is there yet. And for Joe Hunt lived in that big house was a barrack. There was a barrack there. And even a canteen for the police.
Yes.
You see, there was a lot of there, yeah. A corner that had huts. The police used to have to go to stop in the huts. Later Hill was a hut.
Yes.
No, just to be just beyond Ambis, further up near to where that flat roof house is on the
Indeed. The Deed house. Yes.
Yes. Well, Matt Brown's land. It was Matt Brown's land.
The house.
Made.
And were those huts along the road?
Pardon?
Were they along the road?
I believe the one near the road. The one near the road. The one. Well, I didn't hear of the Armstrong's land being boycotted except with Phibbs.
Phibbs, yes.
And Ray from Hill belonged to Phibbs.
see, at
Yeah.
that time. There was a hut on that. And Spanish used to come from the Vatican Chapel. Well, they used to go from Tabernacle out to meet them and come on duty that come from the Vatican Chapel. Watchers and Masters, big house.
Yes, big house.
Chapel.
And now, Chaffpool Post Office.
Yes, that's in Powellsboro.
That's in Powellsboro, actually.
Yes. Actually, it is well inside Powellsboro.
Yes.
Just on the Powellsboro.
And did you ever hear how that post office came to be there?
Well, it was Amby got it. It was Amby got it. It was old Amby, Brennan, and he got it. I had James Henry's and them in Tabernacle, James Henry on the post office in Tabernacle, and he think he was a great help and recommended Amby too to be postmaster. And I don't know whether Amby done delivery of letters or not, but there was two postboys attached to them, one for this area, Powellsboro, and one for Chaffpool.
Lynn's lived next door to Willie. As teenagers, Winnie, Kathleen and Pag were putting in the hay, assisted as usual by Willie. I talked to them recently when they were home on holidays from the United States. If Lynn families were in Coyle, can you remember?
Three Flynn families. John's, Charles, and us.
And Charlie.
Charlie Flynn. Three Flynn families.
Right. And now Charlie Flynn, would you remember Charlie Flynn?
Oh, I do. Yes. He was a brother of John Flynn,
Right.
and a brother of Tommy Flynn, Matt Flynn's father.
Oh, Matt Flynn's family. Right. He used to play a bit of music.
Oh yes, he was a great player.
And his wife.
And his wife.
Do you remember when they were actually teaching music? Did you hear of them teaching music?
No, not teaching. Well, I think Charlie, you and Mike didn't teach.
Oh, yeah, from Christmas.
Practice it, no.
Is that right?
That was the start of the music.
Gave us a few lessons.
Yes.
This is Peg Flynn now, and Peg plays the flute.
Yes.
He used to.
Used to. And did you ever hear of Charlie or the wife playing the harp?
No, I haven't. No.
Because I think it was Willie told us that they played the harp.
Well, Willie has got that idea, you know.
He's a little older than me.
Is that right? Yes.
No.
Well, now going back to you again, when you were growing up now, you went to America, you said, what year did you go?
50.
1950. So when you were going to school, you went to school in Bailá. And Kathleen, I think
I went to school in Bailá also, yes.
Can you remember the teachers now that taught you?
Oh yes, very well. Mrs. Kenny and Mrs. Devine.
Probably she was Miss Kilcoy, would she have been at that time?
Oh, that.
Was she married when?
Oh yes.
I'm sure
she got married. I believe so.
Yeah.
And like when you were going to school now, were there any of the what we call old people in the area that you'd have heard stories from about the past or anything like that? Or were there any characters that you used to call them?
Not exactly.
When you come on Jan O'Connor.
Oh well, that had a very big memory of him. That I don't know, was he an Outlaw Peck O'Connor? I'm not sure. He was.
No.
Well, what was it? Oh yes, he was.
Nah, there was a lot of conflict.
I remember him, he used to tie a bag round him here, and then always swore no for going like that. That's my memory. Yes, he was. There was Peg, there was Donegal.
Yeah.
That's my...
That's your, now, Kathleen, you went to America in...
In 51.
51. And so you were there before. What was life like when you arrived in America? Was the first year or two, can you...
Well, it was pretty good for me because when he was there already, you see, and actually the Gallagher girls from Newcastle, I was in contact with them and I lived with them also. So life was pretty good as long as I got a job, you know.
And were there plenty of jobs at that time?
It was pretty good, it was. Yeah.
And when you went, you were forced to go, how was it difficult for you now when you went? Or?
Oh, I didn't go to work and after.
See,
I was newly married.
When he had got married to
yes,
she went back. Pretty soon she was expecting, you know.
And Peter was one of the Hunt family here, from a neighbour. And,
yes.
And Peg, can you remember what year you went to?
Oh, 57.
57, you were?
Yeah.
So, how was it like when you went?
I went from one city to another, so it was all the same sort of thing.
You went from London?
Oh, you went from
I was in
London?
London, yeah, for a good many years.
So,
I fell right in, you know.
And what kind of work now did you start off at?
I was painting.
Painting?
House painting.
All the time?
No, not Michelangelo.
He wasn't an interior decorator, he was that way.
Ah, yeah.
And when you went, I think, did Mike go after you or before you?
No, Mike went before me.
Mike was before Paddy, yeah.
Right. So there were 4 of you
Yes.
in America together.
Oh, yeah, we all.
Still 4 of us in America.
And would say I know that you played a fair bit of music.
Oh, yes, quite a bit.
Oh, sorry,
The last couple of years. Last couple of years I didn't.
That's right.
I sort of left it for a while and started playing again. And
came back to it.
Yeah, but I'd be really into it next year.
Well, would you have heard much now, would say, of Peggy Sweeney or Coleman's recordings, or would you talk about guys like that?
I heard them before ever I went to.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Much.
But in America, would you have met them, or?
Oh, I met them, oh, sure.
And played with them?
along with them, oh.
Right.
Yeah.
You didn't meet Coleman?
You met Paddy
Sweeney? Not Michael Coleman, no.
Met Paddy Sweeney and Paddy Cologne.
Yeah.
Yes.
Martin Wynne.
Martin Wynne.
Yes, yes.
Oh,
and in particular now, Paddy Sweeney, you know, there are some tunes attributed to him. Now, there are some people say, yes, he composed certain tunes, and no, he didn't compose those tunes. Would you have met him at any of those times? Would you have known him, like, did he compose some of the tunes he did?
Well, I'm not so sure, but he named some of them he played, like he called them different names, I think. Because of the Castle Lasses.
The poets, the Bogs of Poets.
And the moving Bogs of
Yeah.
Poets. I know Paddy Cologne, but they made those, the played those.
And I think you said that Mike recorded some music with...
Oh, Mike, with Paddy Cologne,
With
yeah.
Paddy Cologne.
And we used to play at the festivals for the dancers and all that type of thing.
And used to be some very big sessions of music, like...
Oh, an awful lot to play, something.
Well, Paddy Cologne played at my wedding.
Is that right?
Yes. And Mike and Paddy.
Right.
Paddy and Sweeney.
So,
yeah, because now to get the character of Sweeney, maybe are there any stories that you can relate about Sweeney?
Not Sweeney.
You know, to give us a...
You wouldn't know where to start.
Well, you were but playing, you want to be
I know, he was good.
story.
Yeah, they all say he was a good player.
I was.
Yes,
He was.
yes, good one.
He was good.
And he liked, you know, a little of that.
No, that was no harm, that was no harm.
As I said, he was a bit of a comedian. He worked in the building where I was working, as I told you before, and really he'd have everybody breaking their hearts laughing. Telling stories, actually.
Musicians that was around the place, like when you were young. Did you ever hear any stories about the Powellsboro band or anything like that?
Not my day.
We don't recall anything.
No, not my day.
It was a bit before our
Yes, you might have heard stories about it. Or
Yes, no, father was a drummer. He was a drummer on it. Right, which I think you should
Tom
play.
Harmison's father.
Oh, yeah.
That's a good big band.
Oh, no,
But
that's...
that's back a long way.
I never had.
No.
They did have a band.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
They had a bash band and their own County Sligo at all that time. Used to be at all football matches and all celebrations in the town, you know. Nothing like that used to. Like they used to shake the windows in the town.
Oh, yeah.
They might be too good, but I just wanted to say.
Yeah.
Probably Charlie played with them, Charlie Flynn. Probably did, aye. In them days.
talking about some of the families that lived here many years ago. With me I have Mary Owens, presently Mary O'Reilly, and Jimmy Owens. And first of all, Mary, you might give us a little rundown on the family history, the connection with the Brennans and all the families around.
Right, Michael. Well, the Owenses lived in Drimrow and the Brennans in Shaftport Post Office. And my mother was Mary Brennan from Shaftport Post Office. And she was married to Amby Brennan, and they called them the Ambys. Now, on my father's side, Bridget Goulden, Willie's mother, was Bridget Owens. Johnny Burke's mother was Mary Owens. And we had another aunt called Ellen Owens who lived over in Flochana. Now she would have a granddaughter here in Drimrow called Ursula Cairns. She's married to Declan Cairns. And then there were other aunts and uncles who had immigrated. There was also a relation between the Brennans, my grandmother, and the Flynns, Charlie Flynn and Max Flynn, and Winnie Flynn, who was Mrs. Hunt, Christina's mother. There was a relationship between those because my grandmother, Mary Brennan, her father had married twice, and it was through that relationship that through that marriage, the relationship came with the Flynns, all those Flynns. And Mary Ellen Hunt was another sister of Christina Brennan's, and there was a very great relationship between all of those. In actual fact, your own mother, Michael Tess Fihile, always claimed that there was a relationship between the Fihiles and the Owenses, but I don't know very much about that now. Now, my Aunt Annie ran the post office in Shaftport with my grandmother and Uncle Tommy. Uncle Tommy was the post boy there. And my Aunt Annie married a man called Peter Nyland from Drimban in Curry. And they lived in Ballysadare all their lives till she died there. Then he returned to Curry to his sister Bridget Nyland and brother John Nyland. And of course all of them are dead and gone now. Then Uncle Tommy in Shaftport Post Office married Kathleen Gallagher of Tullivilla, Coonacool. And she ran the post office there from 1939 until maybe 5 or 6 years ago when she became ill. And she died in St. John's Hospital some weeks ago. Now, I don't know what year the post office came to Chatpool, or why it was called Chatpool Post Office really, because it is in Powellsboro. But maybe my brother Jim would be able to fill us in on that one.
Yeah, that was a question I was going to ask about, if you had any recollection of how the post office was imposed, or was called Chatpool Post Office.
It was an agreement my grandfather made with whoever he managed to get the post office from, or to get the post office for him. Yeah. He made the agreement to be called Chatpool, because somebody else had planned to have that post office way down in Mundabrina, like, that would be nearer to Chatpool, or might be called Chatpool. And this was the agreement, that it would be called Chatpool, right?
Yes.
And that's, I know, but it is a truth, I suppose. And that's as far as I can go about it. But for the owner's side, they live down at Durkin's, or Marina Durkin, what's her name now?
Loftus now.
Just past there at the river.
Yes.
That's where their house was. And 4 or 5 they came up here from there. And they built this house. And they were saying they were waiting to build the house with stone. And the stone they quarried was up at this field here. And there's a round hole there between this field and Matt Brennan's.
Yes.
Right? And they quarried the stone up there, but that was a great feat in them days, I'll just say so. But beyond that, I can't go.
That was the old house now, where
the old house down there.
Right.
And they quarried all that stone, they built it themselves, and my father was a carpenter, and my grandfather was a mower of meadow, which was an important thing in that century and the beginning of this. But the majority there, my father's brothers went to America. And because my father was so old when he got married, we didn't realise that another brother of his called Pat Owens had a family of 8 in New York City. So one day I was visiting, one year I was visiting Chicago, where my sister Teresa lives, and we went down to, where is that, Las Vegas. So in Las Vegas you do nothing but play the one-hand bandit, and sometimes you can sit up at a bar and have a drink. And I was sitting at a bar having a drink and nobody hardly there till this other fella came along. And he was from New York, and he told me how often he comes down here. And he seemed to think that I knew from Ireland. And you know who he was? A cousin of my own that I never knew existed.
Yes.
He was Pat Owens' son. And I never knew Pat Owens was married, or that he had 8 children. What a thing.
Yes, I'm sure was. I'm sure was.
But that might be a lie, but
we take it as the truth now anyway. But going back to the post office now.
Yeah.
Somebody said that the mail car came along the road.
Yes.
Or someplace.
Aye.
And that because the post office was convenient to Chatpool House,
yes,
that was one of the reasons why
yes,
the post office was located there.
No, probably was.
That be, you ever hear that? Or
That could probably be true, but I would say the fact that Chatpool House was a very important place. Probably in those days, I would say the name Chatpool must have been very important, and probably that's why it was called Chatpool Post Office. But it would have facilitated that Chatpool House, would have given a very good service of delivery to the house. But the mail car came along that road from Clare to Ballymote for many, many years, and delivered, collected and delivered mail from Chatpool Post Office. And in those days the post office was a very big place, a very busy place with the pensions and postal deliveries. It would have been much busier than rural post offices are now.
Yes, and would you have heard like your people talking about it would it have been a great place for people to gather and talk?
It was because I can remember that. I can remember that myself when my aunt was there, and I would be up there as a youngster, you know, and I'd always hear the people, you know, that we gathered there talking about whatever was topical at the time, or you know, and sometimes you wouldn't be let in, or among them when they were talking, they put you out, and there was a lovely atmosphere and a very friendly atmosphere between the people at that time.
I was up there one day and there was 2 men in the post office. And one fella says, thanks, but that was in June, thanks be to God I don't owe a penny to anyone in this world. And the rates are not due till November. And then the man says, I wish to God I could say that. But anyway, the man that owned nothing was dead in October. And the man that was owed so much, I see him alive 40 years later. With a new car.
New car.
So, but that's only a model anyway. Yeah, but but it was always great talk. And Michael Hunt was the best man I ever heard. Michael Hunt in Powellsboro. He was Matt Hunt's brother. And he was always in England, and he used to tell great stories about what he'd do in England, you know. But it was quite a great place for a gathering always. And people would be waiting for parcels from America, closed parcels. And they wouldn't wait to be getting home, and they wouldn't like to open them when they'd be there.
Right.
So one fellow used to be biting a bit with the parcel, you know. So that sort of thing, you know.
And when the postman now, you know, would say Tommy was the postman previous to that, you mentioned parcels from America. How used to deliver all those parcels? You know, they only had a bike.
No, but yes, he'd have his bike full, often. But talking about, like, you know that hill up there, you know the name of it?
Leitrim Hill?
No, this road up here.
Oh, sorry, no.
Dominic Spray was well known all over the country, down a Budden and places like so.
Yes.
And Dick Hawley was coming down Dominic Spray with a pitchfork, going down to Murdersbog to spread turf with a pitchfork, and cycling a bicycle. And he was passing down by our house. Adam, no, God, Jesus, Fork went through the slit of smoke, lived across the field. And that's going away from the portions.
Would you ever have remembered the post being delivered on horseback?
Oh, never.
No.
No.
Because somebody told me that originally, when the post office started, that they used to deliver the post on a white horse. You never heard that?
No, I don't. I never heard that, Michael. But at that time, I would say that whoever was available to deliver letters, like in the house, would be doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, the different members of the family, just to get the delivery done and get the post there. But I never heard of a horse.
No, I didn't.
Never heard
There was such things.
Yes.
They took it from the Great West, is it what you call it?
The Wild West.
The Wild West. Who was that great man? That was...
Well, you mentioned something earlier on there, and just bring you back to it there when you talk about Dominic Spray. You know, in those times that we're talking about now, the roads were in poor condition, but you had there was a certain plan for repairing the roads. Can you tell us that again, the people that repaired this road?
Oh, Peter May and Peter Mann, both of them lived in 2 cottages in between and Tubberculloch. And there was a wheelbarrow and a shovel and spades, I suppose. And Johnny Flynn from Powellsboro, from Cull, would fill up the sand in what they call the depots, right? And Johnny Flynn from Cashel would deliver the sand to Peter May and Peter Martin. And so it went on until 35, was it? When they started this road. And the first sign of them doing this road was a letter my father got from the council to cut a branch of a sycamore tree that was down in front of the gate, right? So someone went up and told Tommy, and my father went over to Jim Buck's for 2 lads to help him. And Tommy came down on his bicycle and he climbed up the tree and he cut the branch in a matter of seconds and went off home again. Before my father came home, the whole thing was done. And that was number 1 sign that there was something happening. The next day, we were coming from school, late in 35, there was a whole load of stones piled up at the crossroads. This was for the stone crusher.
Yes.
And so it was done. Then 35 at the beginning, and 36 they finished the turning of it. So that was the history of that.
That was the turn of the road here.
The first time it was turned.
And then it probably was turned between Tubbercurry and Ballymore.
Tubbercurry and Gurcheen. They followed the bus route.
Oh, right.
Because they didn't go through Budden with it for years, I think. But up through Gurcheen, and where did they go to there? Castlebrae was it? Castlebrae was the first, was the changeover for the bus drivers. Do you remember?
Yes, yes, yes.
The Sligo man would drive it to Castlebrae and the Galway man would drive it out to there and then they'd go back home. See?
But where the road would be concerned, it would end wherever County Sligo is between that and Roscommon. That would be all the road would be doing, yes.
Now when you mentioned the bus service, would you remember the bus service starting on the road or?
Well now then, was there a bus service coming on the road before that branch was cut? I don't know. But I can remember about a bus was a time. You know, for the time.
Yes.
You know what time it was going home or going that ways. And Dockery's vans was another one. You ever hear of Dockery's vans?
The bakery in Ballymore.
That's right. Well, about 7 or 8 of them would pass here every evening, coming home. But what time they went in the morning, I didn't see them.
They came in the morning.
Yeah.
But getting back to the bus, Michael, there was a bus route. The bus route from Castlereagh to Sligo was in being in the early 40s, I would say, or the 30s. Yeah, there was a bus.
Oh, it must be well.
Yes, that bus route was in existence since then.
Well, of course, around that time, people when they were travelling had to either walk or cycle or whatever. We talked there earlier on about hackney cars.
Yes.
Who would have a hackney car around here?
Mick Conley was the only one. Johnny Davy.
Johnny
Davy, yes.
And Mick Conley. And my father walked into the town one day, and at 3 coins he got the bus. And they charged him 8 pence to get it to Tubbercurry. And that was the first and only time he ever rode in a bus.
And it cost him 8 pence.
And it cost him 8 pence. And he never was on a train and never on a bus. That's something for witness.
Yes, yes.
And he's only dead a few years.
Yes, yes. Now I think you said earlier on too that the Brennans, Ambie Brennans, came from in nearer Tubbercurry.
That's right. Owenbone, I suppose you call it. Behind Murthas. And he had a relation up on Piper Hill one time. Was he a painter brand?
Yes, there was painter brands up there, yes.
And there were painter brands down the town.
That's right.
By John Nicholson's, where John Nicholson's lived. I suppose there's some of them alive there, yes.
Well, certainly there were some of the...
Burnley brand.
Oh, Burnley is there, that's right.
That's right.
Now, I think you said earlier on that there was an uncle of yours hid sovereigns.
It was my grandfather.
Oh, yes.
In that house where he was living in home. And as far as I know, no one found him yet.
Powellsboro.
Yeah, well, the best man that ever was lived round here. When he was here, there used to be a gang of young people, girls and boys, playing camogie and football down in the Fenian Brannan's field in Powellsboro. 60 or 70 every evening. Like Tess Feely, Mary Maha, and Molly Gallagher, I think.
Yes.
Christina Hunt, Winnie Hunt, all the Rowan girls, Mary McGowan, Sal Davy, and quite a lot like that, and Min Tom McGowan, Matt Dick, I don't think he ever came. And he was one of the best footballers that ever was around here. And there was always a big crowd there. And of course Tom then started up a dramatic society, a cross-country team, and he was a great man altogether. It is only when he would be gone that you realise what a great man he was,
yes.
Because there was no folly up for a long time afterwards. That field this side of Collooney where all the steps are, have you noticed that field?
Yes.
Well, that's where they used to keep the cattle before they put them in the railway trucks and ship them all over the place. And this heifer was there in that field. And she was lowing like hell and looked very sorry for herself. When my grandfather was coming out of Sligo with a horse and cart, and my Jersey opened the gate and let her come out. And she flew up the road. And when she came to the river, you know the river, the old moor river, under the road, down near Ballycarrot, she got into the river. And she seemed to know that she came from her own place. So she came up the river, walk on the shallow and swim in the deep. And she come out and ate grass on the bank or in a field. And chew her cud and drink pretty water to drink. So she was quite happy. And she kept doing that for a long time. And one day there was a bull in the field and she went and visited the bull. And she got back home about 6 or 7 weeks after the time she was missing. And they said, well now, if someone doesn't come to collect her, we'll keep her. And they kept her. And the 12th calf she bred was something similar to what she was herself. And this man was selling her at the fair in Tubbercurry, and the man who bought the first one was a lot older. He says, I bought a heifer like that here 20 years ago, and I lost her. But Jesus says, it was me that sold it to you. I recognise you. And you can have that one now for £0.50. And I give you 5 and say, look. And that was it.
I talked to a person who was 96, and he reckoned he was involved in the Chaffcool ambush.
Yeah.
And that they actually hid in stacks of oats.
Yes.
That's how they...
That's right.
They siege.
That's right.
Did you ever hear anything like that or any?
No, I heard about the stooks of oats, and they were shifting them from the middle of the field out along to the hedge, and this old lady says, leave that man's oats alone. He says, see, you watch yourself, but we won't leave you alone. So that much oldie.
Yes.
But it was sheaves of oats. But later was Paddy Stinchon's field. And there was a guard's barrack just down a bit from there. So they mustn't be there at that time. The barrack mustn't be there at that time, was there?
Well, it was further in. It was further in Chaffcool, wasn't it?
Oh God, no, the barrack was... Chaffcool's post office, walk across the road and go 10 yards up the road and look in there where the barracks were. In that field just down for Paddy Stinchon's, beside the road.
Was that right?
That's what they were. It took me a long time to find out that now. But it was old Pat Stinchon that told me. I heard them telling us. And there was a lovely flagstones. Now these ladies here heard the same story. And he says they were all swiped. They were all swiped, he says. And I know where they went to. So all my relations was around there, so I was worried.
Well, you said earlier on too that there was a castle someplace on Leitrim Hill.
That's right. The old Moor Castle. And at the later time, especially the witch lived up there in the small house. So they tell you, I tell you that story, it's on there, especially the witch.
No, it's not yet. We didn't. No, we have to hear that one, yes.
Well, Tom came down here later from his father. Had a cow and a good milker she was. And one morning when he took her in to milk her, or to go out to milk her, she had no milk to give him. And that night she had a full quota, right? So the next morning she had no milk either. And the third morning he went out earlier
and the cow was lying down. He watched her for some time, and all of a sudden, down Dick Brennan's field, this hare came hopping. And the cow was laying down, so the hare went up to her, slapped her on the back, and she rose up, and the hare started sucking her. So Tom said, "Aye, just there now," something like that. So the next day he got a fella from down Powellsboro with a greyhound, and the two of them waited out until the hare came down again, and to put the greyhound after this hare, and following them all over Dick's fields and across the road and through a flock of sheep. The hare kept going and got up to this house near the castle where this lady lived, a small little house, and there was a little window on the gable, and the hare went in the window, and just then the hound caught the hare to the scut and whipped it out. So my dears went into the house, and the old lady was, what was she, baling wool or something, not, what do you call it? Weaving. "What are you doing here, gentlemen?" Something like so. "Well, where's that hare that came in here?" "I didn't see no hare." "When we searched the house," "Well, you can search the house. There's only one room. See, look under the beds and here and there, everywhere." And then when they were going out, they said, "Well, we're sorry we've disturbed you." "I should say so, an art," she said, sort of angry like. And if she said nothing, they wouldn't have looked round to see that you were sitting on a pot, you see. So the fellow went down back to her and pulled her off the pot. What do you think was in the pot?
Hare.
No, but blood. And her whole arse was cut.
So she must have been the hare.
Oh, she was the witch. And then they were going to, when they were going to take her out to burn her, I bet you she turned into a jackdaw. And flew across the Carmel Wood.
No wonder. Well, tell me this now. You mentioned Tom Kane there. An awful lot of stories told about Tom Kane.
There is. He was like a very fast-flowing river that was never harnessed, because he was a sort of a genius of a man. And he was thinking once, or saying once, he was going to build a house for himself without a screw or a nail, right?
Yes.
And a long time afterwards, I was in Wales one time, and I came across this church without a screw or a nail. So that's where he got his idea from, I suppose. But he didn't tell us out here. And then he was going to build a house round the outhouse, and then throw the outhouse out through the windows and the door, see? And he grew tobacco, and he never could get it properly saved or dried. Or there's a lot of other things that you have to put into it. But he used to smoke it all the same, and it was like rags burning. And he goes to the house, he cleared the whole house out. And another time he had a flock of hens, and they'd always come home to roost at Tom's place. And they'd be off in the morning and going to cornfields and every place else, but they'd be back at night. And Tom says, "Everybody tells me what great fowl I've got, but they never tell me what nice broth they make." But he had several crushes with the Black and Tans, or so to say. One time they came to arrest him, and he must have heard them coming down the brae on the hill, and off he went up behind the house and up for later hill. And as the Tans stopped outside, they seen a man running down the bogs the other side, and they shot at him, and he fell. And they went down, and when they were near that place, that man rose up again, and they shot again, and he fell again, and he kept doing that until he brought them out to home. and Tom was escaped across the hill.
Tom was gone the other way.
He was gone the other ways. But I don't know whether that was true or not. Another time he had a crowd of men saving hay or something, and he brought them in for their dinner. And he laid out the table, and then all of a sudden he caught his cat with the back of the neck and held her up against the press. I started thumbing her. What a big. She started big. What a big. And then he gave someone a tin can. And he says, "Go now," he says, "and steal a Martha Davis cow, camouflage her in the corner, and get..." But these are facts, I think.
Was it true that he borrowed a bicycle from somebody and he went to Dublin? Did you ever hear that story?
Yeah, I think I did. It was Tommy Ambis, my Uncle Tommy's. But now I don't know how is this what he did in Kildare. He went near the Curragh, where he had been imprisoned, and he was looking for something he had under wire. I'm sure he couldn't see no trace of that camp that was in at all. But I don't know what else then. Oh, yes, it was a good story. I just can't think. Can you, Mary?
Well, getting back to Tom. Tom was very, he used to do a lot of walking. Michael, he was nearly always on the road walking. And he used to walk to Knock and home again. And every year he walked to Kirkpatrick and back again. And then as he got, I remember he had a lovely farm of land, beautiful land, but I only can remember one animal on that land. It was a beautiful black mare. The mare would really remind you of Black Beauty. Yes. And Tom, finally something happened to that horse. It got lost in a bog hole or something like that. But in Tom's old age, he began to write his memoirs. And I remember helping him with the typing of them. And all through, I can't remember it very well, but through it anyhow, he was giving the stories of his escapades with the Tans, and when he was on the run, and the nights he spent in different houses, and he went here, there and everywhere. And he seemed to have a great outlook on life. He was always very optimistic. And he always tried to cheer people if somebody would be down and out, or maybe the chips were down, bad times, no money, and he'd always say, "It won't be always raining." And then he had another old saying that if he didn't like somebody, he gave them, just can't remember now how he put it, but he would give them, when he get them, he'd give them a turn off anyhow. Yes. And he suddenly got very ill, and he was hospitalised in Sligo, and there he died. But he could, tell a lot of stories, and always about the war in Ireland, and the men that were on the run, and his time in jail, and the different things he had. He had a lot of history, and he always was in good humour, and he had a great outlook, and he had an awful lot of dreams about what he could do and his ambitions, but he never really achieved a lot of them.
But because he travelled the roads so late at night and so many nights, some people asked him one time if he ever seen a ghost. And he says, "I was passing by Clunammehan graveyard one night, and this man walked out on the road in front of me, and kept walking in front of me. And I started walking faster, and he started walking faster. When I started running, and he started running. And I stood up, and he stood up. And all of a sudden I realised it was a wiggle hair on the leaf of my hat."
And every morning he used to do his exercises, and he called them physical jerks. And then he experimented with the tobacco, but he didn't do a good job on that. And then he made another concoction, which was to cure baldness. Now he himself was very bald, and you'd see him rubbing on this on the head constantly. But I don't think it worked either.
That was a good answer.
And he had a little pup, and he used to come up across the fields to my mother, sometimes for milk or whatever, and he used to say, Puppy took the woads and I took the weeds. And when I catch Puppy, I put mangoes on him. And that in plain English was, Puppy took the roads and I took the fields. And when I catch Puppy, I put manners on him.